to the Efed podcast, the podcast exploring our fantasy wrestling hobby, where the wrestling is written, but the characters are real.
Hey everybody, welcome back to another edition, Efed podcast, special edition, Brian, episode 80. Excited to have everybody in for the 80th episode of the podcast. And actually, it's a little bit beyond that because we had some special editions in between. But Brian, what an occasion it is.
What an occasion indeed. This is the 80 for Haiti. All proceeds are going to Haiti?
Maybe. So thanks for tuning in. Episode 80. Guys, today we've got a packed show for you. We've got an interview with Kevin. I don't know if you know Kevin, but he was once the handler for the Flying Frenchie in the FWO back in the day. And now, after a long hiatus from e-wrestling, he is handling all business, Alex Bruder, in classic-wrestling.com. Ironically enough, he heard about my new Fed through the podcast, as that's how he came back to e-wrestling. One of these fun stories, Brian. We've had a handful of guys come back to e-wrestling through the Efed podcast, and you're right, you do love to see it, Christy. We've also got Five Boroughs Wrestling on the spotlight, and not only that, Brian, not only do we have a new spotlight, well, a former spotlight coming back, but it's a special episode. It's a special edition. We're going to do it live with Meg in person here on the show, Handler and Fedhead in 5BW. I'm excited to bring it to you here later on the show. Check it out, the live spotlight. So, Brian, beyond that, what else do we have on the show today?
And also we have the question of the week.
Every single week we bring you the question of the week. And, of course, you can find that on the Twitter machine pinned to the top of that profile. Twitter.com/EFed or the Efed podcast. Sorry about that.
The is the only one.
I'm from Ohio, so we like that. Beyond that, you can also find us in the Efed podcast Discord. You can answer that question of the week if you don't want to be limited to the characters of Twitter. We got plenty of guys who do not like to be limited, Brian.
Indeed. Well, hey, just to mix things up on this very, very, very special episode, I'll ask you first this time on the Efed podcast question of the week.
Hit me, Brian.
What's the wildest Efed you've ever been in, and what made it so unique?
Wildest Efed's ever been in. The United Toughness Alliance, the UTA,
Utah,
was probably one of the top ones. It was dramatic. It was fun. Everyone had their own cliques, and all these groups went to war all the time. OOC, IC.
I like a good IC. I prefer cherry.
It was a good time, and it was the wild, wild west, so to speak, in the UTA. Also, I got to give a shout out to way, way back in the day, the ICE, International Championship Extreme, the ICE. They would have shows like in mansions where everyone was wrestling in different sections of the mansion. And then they would have like special shows like on boats and different stuff. Like everything was a gimmick. And it was the first time I ever encountered it. And so that was definitely a big shock to the EFed system for me, Brian.
When it comes to ice, I prefer Italian. Ice. Cherry is still my flavor.
Of course you do. So, Brian, what about the wildest EFed that you've ever been in, and why?
As past interviews would tell, I'll probably catch a little bit of flack from one or two people for this answer because I've been in some that I don't remember. But for me, 100%, it was Warren Fitzpatrick's Fed, the MWC, the Multinational Wrestling Corporation. How do I remember? But MWC, and it was the wildest, mostly because there were so many standard stalwart role players doing their thing, doing this, doing that. And man, just sign of the times, he just let some young upstarts run wild like Hulkamania.
Running wild, got a pose at the end of the show.
Got a pose.
Eat your vitamins, take your prayers, brother.
Got to pose, got to interrupt every match. And Warren talked about it in his interview. But yeah, probably the wildest Fed. And even on top of that, my character K9 had some crazy matches, period. But one in particular, like some kind of 4 corners of death cage match with Eli Flair. I mean, just, like some real ECW, FMW stuff. I mean, just but yeah. I mean, craziest.
I have no doubt that Pete can fill us in move by move someday here on the Efed podcast.
Let's get him back.
Pete can come back like Meg does on the show.
There you go.
But yeah, so crazy Feds, we're going to hear about yours and your wildest experiences later on the show. It's a fun question of the week. And of course, guys, catch it on Twitter and Discord. If you can't find the Discord, it's in the Twitter profile. Totally
OVS.
Totally OVS. There it is. All right. We're going to get Kendricks on the show next week.
Hey,
no, kidding.
Goddamn.
Guys, check out our sponsors. Fired like Joe, fired like Seth, fired. Wait, we haven't gotten to Seth yet. Spoiler alert.
But by the way, Seth, you're fired.
Sponsors on this week's show, FSW Network. Guys, make sure you check out the future stars of wrestling over at the FSWNetwork.com. There it is. It's the place to catch the #1 network in e-wrestling right now because the WWE network sucks.
Oh, fuck. I canceled my shit.
It sucks so bad. Check out FSW, $6.99 a month. You can't beat the deal. FSWNetwork.com.
You love to see it. .com.
You've also got OccupyProWrestling.com. Our good friend Alex Smiley, of course, hanging out, rocking the community, checking out his YouTube videos. They do live podcasts. They do all kinds of wrestling stuff. This is not e-wrestling. This is wrestling. If you're a fan, check out Occupy Pro Wrestling.
Putting the smart back in smart marks.
There he is.
.com.
And don't forget to check out EFEDTees.com. And of course, EWTees.com. This week, guys, we're bringing you Kev. We're bringing you Meg. We're bringing you questions of the week. I'm so excited. Episode 80. The Efed podcast is a totally free podcast that drops each and every single week for your e-wrestling ears on a multitude of apps. If you'd like to support the show, however, the best way to do so is over at patreon.com/Efed podcast. For as little as $3 a month, you can support both Brian and myself as we crank out more e-wrestling content with perks such as early releases and special Discord designations. And if that's not enough EW action for you, jump up to the $10 a month tier and you can get a free EWT's t-shirt design, early and ad-free editions of the show, as well as access to our monthly Q&As, bad graps, and more. And if you'd like to be a sponsor on the show and get your ad played, the best way to do that is the sponsor level on Patreon with all of the previous perks plus weekly commercials on the show. Check it out over at patreon.com/Efed podcast. We greatly appreciate your consideration.
Occupy Pro Wrestling, putting the smart back into smart mark since 2012, with a community on Discord and message boards, merchandise, a weekly vodcast on Twitch, and much more. Check out everything from us and our site partners at OccupyProWrestling.com.
Efed Tees, the #1 source for Efed merchandise, offering custom merchandise made for your wrestler, tag team, stable, or Efed. Whether you want a high-quality t-shirt, face mask, hoodie, hat, it doesn't matter. We can help you out over at EFEDTees.com. Do you have a custom logo for your wrestler? Awesome. We're going to slap it on a shirt and help you out real fast. If not, no problem at all. We have a custom design service too. You can work with a graphic artist to get the perfect design made for your character. Go on over to EWTees.com and click on Want a Shirt to get your shirt started. EFEDTees.com.
For over a decade, Defiance Wrestling has redefined what an Efed can be. An angle-fed with a rich history and a colorful cast of characters, Defiance Wrestling offers a drama-free environment with some of the most experienced and talented writers in the history of the game, with a level of consistency that few other promotions can offer. With on-time events, micro offerings, and even a long-form in-character radio show, as well as a forum home on the classic fwrestling.com, nobody, I said it, nobody does fantasy wrestling quite like Defiance. Come, see what all the buzz is about. Come check out DefianceWrestling.com. You heard me. It's DefianceWrestling.com. I'll see you there.
All right. We've got a brand new sponsor here on the podcast. I'm excited to bring him to you because, guys, this is the real deal. This is not an Efed. This is pro wrestling at its finest, and welcome back to a network that's easy to use. We've got the FSWNetwork.com as our new sponsor. That's the Future Stars of Wrestling Network. You can check it out. One of the top indie promotions on the West Coast. They have their own network now for $6.99 a month. You'll get access to over a decade of content, including wrestlers that you and I both know, like Karrion Kross, Matt Hardy, Chris Bay, Zoe Stark, Brian Cage, and so many more. You get access to network-exclusive shows, live streams, specials, and more. They've got pay-per-views, they've got weekly shows, they've got shows that just got uploaded that are from July. Guys, this thing is going quick. It's growing quick. Get in on the ground floor before it goes up. $6.99 a month is not bad for 10 years of content. There's content on content on content on here. And for what I'm hearing, even the original series are getting more views than some of the wrestling shows. They're that good. Check it out, FSW Network, the future stars of wrestling, right now at FSWNetwork.com.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the Efed Spotlight segment. This week we're doing something a little bit different. You heard it a few weeks ago. We're doing it again this week here on episode 80, a special edition. Brian, we've got a special guest for the Spotlight.
Ooh.
We've got Meg, the Fed head, co-Fed head of 5BW. That's Five Boroughs Wrestling. You can check them out at 5bwrestling.com. Meg, how you doing?
It's about time I'm back. Long time no talk.
It is about time. We're excited to have you back on the show. You were a guest way back when we first got started, and I'm excited to bring you back on the show live for a little spotlight action.
Yep, I'm excited. Then everyone will hear what 5BW is about from the Fed head herself.
That's right. We talked about it's Five Boroughs Wrestling. Meg, tell us where we can find Five Boroughs, both on Twitter and online.
Okay, so there's a lot of changes from the last time around. It's been like ages ago since I plugged this. So we're still at Boroughs5 on Twitter. We're still at www.5bwrestling.com. And now we're under and now we're under 5bw.efeder.net. Vlad is hosting us.
And not only that, but I believe it's 5bw.efedtees.com.
Oh, I forgot that, of course.
The official merchandise of 5B Wrestling. So, Meg, tell us a little bit about 5BW. How does the Fed operate?
So, obviously, as you guys know, we're an Angle Fed based out of New York City. We go to every single 5 boroughs from Staten Island, Bronx, Queens, Manhattan, Brooklyn. But recently, over the past couple seasons, we've been expanding out to overseas. Just recently, go ahead.
You had a pay-per-view, I believe it was in Japan?
Japan. Then we're going to Germany in October. And then Brian, I heard that. Then we're going to Ireland in December. So basically, we're like international all of a sudden. It's really cool.
Very nice. I think you missed, if you didn't do it, you missed a very, Staten Island and Shaolin. Shaolin, the 6th borough.
So I kind of cheated right there because we are going to Long Island for one of the shows. And I think March or April.
But should you?
Yeah. Hey, I gotta expand. You can't be in one place.
Nassau County, what up? All right, so you answered the next question. RP Angle, obviously, Angle Fed. We know that. So,
Angle.
How often are the shows and pay-per-views? Like, what is the overall schedule arc kind of looking like?
Well, believe it or not, it's now to 3 because our roster, which I'll talk about, is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. Obviously, the house show format is still there at the beginning of the month. We added a show called Destination on every Saturday before the big show happened, and obviously it remains the same. The big show is still the same every Sunday or Monday, depending on deadline schedules.
I thought the big show was Paul White now.
You can say that, yeah.
So you were a monthly Fed, so you're saying now that there's not only house shows once a month, but you have the big show once a month, but you also have a show in between.
Yes. So as I said, we expanded over the course of the 2 seasons.
Very nice.
And you can also check out that season 2 T-shirt. Where, Brian?
At 5bw.efedtees.com.
.com.
Don't step on my gimmick, Meg.
Sorry. Damn it.
All right, Meg. So what are the rules of 5BW? So if I'm a handler, what's the deal? Like, how do I participate and what do I do? It's an angle Fed, but what do I plan as a handler?
How does Mikey get over?
How does Mikey unlikely get over in 5BW? That's the major question.
So the major story is always tell the story. That's always important. As an enhancer, you have to read the shows. Unfortunately, just recently, we don't have people reading the shows, which stinks because all of us work hard here writing your character and you don't know what's going on. So that's a big important rule. Another rule is respect one another. That's the one thing I always say. Have respectable conversations. We're all adults. And most importantly, don't be an asshole.
Well, I'm out.
Sorry, Brian, you're not going to fit into 5BW, but everybody else, I mean, those are pretty standard rules across the board.
Yeah, great rules. So, moving forward, active championships. What are we looking at here? What do you got? What are they? Give us a little news.
So, it's still the same. The 5BW World Championship, the 5BW Fight Championship, the 5BW Tag Championship, and the 5BW Freedom Championship. Everything has remained the same since.
Honestly, for anyone who hasn't heard the spotlight on 5BW prior, what is kind of the higher? I mean, I assume it's in descending order of how you explain them, but what's kind of the hierarchy of those titles?
Obviously, the World Championship. The second is the Freedom. Then you have the Fight, which was supposed to be our 24/7 championship, but we got rid of that rule because we just made it to like a regular title. Then the Tag Championships.
Very nice.
And then occasionally during the months, we have our cups. Like we just started our Steinbrenner Cup. We're doing a little bit of different format, so we're kind of excited. Dave is helping me along the way because knowing me, I get confused easy with some stuff. So he's going to be helping me with the Steinbrenner Cup. We changed the Captain's Cup to the Budge Cup. Obviously, you know what happened in January with my grandfather. Mm-hmm. That was a tribute to him, and we have Tag Extravaganza, which I'll get to down the line because there's a lot of things we need help with.
Well, there you go. I think it's cool that you have not only these monthly pay-per-views, but you sometimes highlight certain events or certain titles.
Yes, because that's what you got to do.
That's right. You can't just be a one championship Fed.
Mm-hmm.
So we talked about the championships. Let's talk about the wrestlers. Give us some of the top wrestlers in 5BWs. Give us a top 10, no specific order. No one's better than anybody else.
No one's better.
And to keep the gimmick alive, I'm going to need you to botch as many names as possible.
Oh, hold on. Well, I'm a well-known botcher. I apologize beforehand. All right. No particular order?
No particular order.
Hit us, Meg.
Go for it.
All right, here we go. We got Ariel Madden, Luciana Verdoza, Clarissa Vega, Amy Harrison, Marianne Harrison, Sam Tolson, Darian Andrews. There's a bot right there. Sorry. Larissa Johnson, D6, and Drew Rogers, 10.
All right, you got off
There
easy.
you go.
Yeah, for having recently gone to Japan, there's not that many Japanese names.
Brian and I struggle with those names often.
Well, we did have someone from Japan, Goro Matsui. He is in the Steinbrenner Cup.
I'm offended how easily you rattle that name off, and I don't like it.
And I like the idea of the Steinbrenner Cup. You've got 5 boroughs wrestling, obviously taking place in New York, and the Steinbrenner name is obviously huge in the Yankee circle.
Yes. And this year, the Steinbrenner Cup, we have blocks. We have the Derek Jeter Cup. Derek Jeter block. The
George Costanza.
No, hold on. I'm losing my train of thought. Because you're making me laugh here. Mariana Rivera, Don Mattingly, and Mickey Mantle.
There you go. Some Yankees All-Stars.
Yep. Big names.
Yeah, well, hey, Miss George Costanza, so no All-Stars there.
So tell us, Meg, one more time about the Twitter and the website link. Where can people find you guys?
All right. So obviously it's Burrows 5, still the same. 5bwrestling.com, 5bw.efeder.net, and of course 5bw.ewts.com.
There you go. If you're gonna poach a gimmick, that's how you do it. All right. So roster members, how strong is the roster in numbers right now?
Pretty strong. We do have some inactives, unfortunately, but things happen. But because we've been getting a lot regarding the Steinbrenner Cup, that it got to the point where, for the first time ever, I actually had a cat.
Ooh,
nice.
That's how big it got.
You love a cat.
I mean, yes, eventually, it is unlimited characters, and I want people to bring their characters in, but I don't want to be overwhelmed. Like, what the hell is going on here?
You love to see it, Meg, when you get that many characters all in one fed. It's exciting to put a cap on it. I definitely understand where you're coming from. Tell us a little bit additional information about 5EW. What makes it special? And obviously you and Dave co-run it, but tell us what makes 5EW different than your average Angle Fed.
The thing with 5W is we are a dysfunctional family.
Hey.
We're all going to fight. We're all going to argue. But at the end of the day, our main goal is getting the shows out there, working hard, and busting your ass. That's what the mission is. In our Discord, we're all respectable people, even though you have a crazy person in there. Me, hello, always yelling at something. And it's just one big happy family, and we are open to everyone. It doesn't matter where you come from. We are accepting. We care for you. If you're feeling down, you can talk to us. We're open to anything. So just expect a lot of crazy Finn Balor stuff. That's what I say.
Well, there you have it, guys. Check out 5BW at 5bwrestling.com. And also on Twitter at Burrows5 spelled out. Meg, thanks so much for joining us for this spotlight. We're excited to bring 5BW back into a spotlight.
And I know I owe you guys a shirt somehow.
Check out Meg's and 5BW shirts. One of our top customers and a lot of designs over at 5bw.efedtees.com.
Yeah.
And more to come.
Thanks, Meg. Appreciate you joining the show.
That was pretty funny.
That was great.
Yeah, that was good.
All right. I'll catch you guys around. That was fun.
See ya.
Have a good one.
All right. Bye, Mikey. Bye, Brian.
All right, everybody. It's time for one of our favorite segments each and every week. It's the question of the week, Brian.
Of the week.
This week's we answered it at the top of the show, each and individually, but this time we're going to hear from you. Brian knows all my cues. We're going to hear from you out in the crowd, on Twitter, on Discord. This is a fun question. I'm excited to bring it live to you here on the show.
Ooh.
I keep on saying live, but this is totally a recorded show.
It's live to tape.
Live and recorded. Okay. Brian, I'll hit you with the names up first. You read the Twitter question or Twitter answers, and I will switch on the Discord. What is the wildest Efed you've ever been in? And what made it unique? All right, who answered first, Brian? It's Lycan.
Lycana.
Lycana at Lycana9.
And she says, or that person, whoever handles that, says ///, which I take offense to because I just learned what // was. What does 3 slashes mean? Has Wolverine been here?
Oh, I like that.
They say AIWL, ... ellipses. Back in 02-ish, almost illegal wrestling league. Holy shit, all right.
There you go.
I mean, it kind of sounds like porn to an extent, but all right. Almost illegal wrestling league. Desert in a plexiglass cage match, complete with cactus, sand, and scorpions that were attached to my character's breasts like jumper cables. All right.
A little bit wild.
I mean, I'm going to jump back to my previous statement before I knew all that. Kind of sounds like a porn site.
Went back to the weirdness. Yeah. No, it's always fun when you can. No, it's not fun.
No. I mean, yeah. Hey, any segue you can think of, I can't co-sign. I got nothing to say about that.
Lycana, you have left us speechless for the first time in Efed podcast history. It only took 80 episodes.
Hey, from the jump, you put 3 slashes. We don't even know what to do with that.
We don't even know. Answer next week and see if we can come up with something. All right.
Oh, God. Man, that's how you start one.
All I can think of is, never mind, jumper cables. Okay, Thatcher Rex. At Thatcher Rex.
# OOC, a.k.a.
Ook.
Gateway Wrestling Organization, the GWO. Results were insane, complete with a soundtrack and an entrance video for each champion coded into them. It even had a radio show and merch. This is all back in 2004.
Hey, that's pretty legit for 2004.
100%.
Yeah.
I mean, if you want
some merch.
If you want that now, you can head over to efedtees.com.
EWTs.com.
And if you want a radio show, Defiance is a mean in-character radio show.
It sure is. That is insane what they do over there. But anyway, Thatcher Rex, I believe, if I'm not mistaken, was formerly in the Wrestle UTA with me as well.
Ooh.
If I'm wrong, correct me.
He's also a Mormon. I got you.
Not Utah, Brian. Not Utah.
Oh, well, speaking of Mormons.
Speaking of Mormons and Utah, it's Pete.
Pete! He's got a book.
At User Poet, check out Pete's book over on Amazon. One Chance, Legend of Valerian's Garden.
Pete regales us with tales of, I believe, to me at least, the infamous The Asylum. He says, man-on-man rape. That led to castration.
Yum.
Wanton murder. God complex sociopath. Dogman. And a guy with a Doritos bag on his head.
Hey, I know that guy.
And that's just off the top of my head. Well, Pete, I'll at least say this. Off the top of your head, no one can ever say you buried the lead. You
I love it.
You started with man-on-man rape. That led to castration.
And then he went down to Dogman. So I think you lead with Dogman and end with castration.
Yeah, you know, build up, man. Tell a story. Long-time bucking, Pete. The Legend of Valerian's
Thanks for the answer. We're going to hear from you again later on the show.
Oh.
Brian, finally on Twitter, it's not... Hold on, is it finally?
Yeah.
It's not finally.
No, it's not.
At UWL Online, our good friend Jay Jefferson.
Jay Jefferson. I was at a Fed called MPW. The Fed had booked a match where the ring, oh God, Joe's going to love this, floated on ale. To win,
I'm in.
You had to drink all the ale. Mikey, I think you have an app for that.
Double in. I have an app. It's called the Untapped app. Check it out. If you like beer,
not a sponsor.
Check out the Untapped app. Not a sponsor of the show, but just a fun app. I have 500, almost 600 beers checked in.
Check for Defiance's newest propaganda piece by Pat Cassidy called Untapped, coming in the few weeks, I'm sure. Also, you're fired, Joe.
Joe, you are super fired. Welcome to Classic.
And you're fired again for being in Classic.
All right, Brian, up next is at Shaw #4 Real. It's Carter Shaw.
I was in a Fed back in the day called SW, Siberian Wrestling. Well, that's scary. The concept was the roster were all inmates at a Siberian prison who were booked in wrestling shows each week. Yeah. So my initial reaction was correct. It was the first time I'd seen a storytelling platform like that within Fedding. I've seen similar.
It's like Asylum, but in the snow.
Yeah, or Death Row.
Oh, or Death Row. Good call. Yeah, there's a lot of those prison feds.
What does that say about us as a society?
As E-Fedders, we like prison. So, good answer from Carter Shaw and a good discussion point on prison E-Feds. We'll have to do a special on that stuff.
Yeah, we need to do a whole deep dive, investigative report.
And the weirdness of all these E-Feds. So Thatcher Rex, it comes back again, Brian, at the end.
Pound sign! Ook! Holy shit. I completely forgot about that place. I assume he's referencing Siberian wrestling.
Yes, sir.
He says, I ran Darkseed. Well, hey, as a strong member of the cease and desist order, you'll be hearing from DC. You'll be hearing from DC Comics any day now.
And it's cool how these questions of the week sometimes can pick people up like this and say, hey, I recognize you from this place.
Yeah. Hey, if nothing else, we're bringing people together.
We are, and we're bringing people back to E-Fedding, which is more important.
And only charging a small premium over on Patreon. Patreon.com/EFedPodcast.
.com/EFedPodcast. All right. And Brian, we're going to switch it up on the Discord side of things.
Switch it up.
We're going to have to go into the EFed Podcast Discord. Click on that question of the week button. You hit me with those names, and I'll hit you with those answers. Let's roll.
Up first, it's Tony.com.
Tony says classic wrestling. Oh, bonus points for this guy.
Ooh,
the characters are wildly creative, and the Fed itself is fun as hell. You love to see it, Christy. Wild Fed, Fun Fed, Classic Dash Wrestling. .com.
Up next, I think we'll all recognize this one. He's got a book.
Wait a minute. This is the question so nice that Pete answered twice.
Oh, it's the Shadow Pope. It's Pete.
It's Pete. The only correct answer to this question is the Asylum. Thanks, Pete, for that insightful answer.
But hold on. He already said that.
Oh, did he answer both on twitter.com/the EFed podcast and in the Discord, the EFed podcast Discord?
Pete, now on punishment. We will no longer tell anyone about your book. No one will ever know again that you made a book. You wrote a book. The book that's called what? It was The Legends of Valerian's Garden. You can find on Amazon.com. We're not saying that ever again now. Shame. Anyway, up next.
Shame. But meanwhile, we are making a shirt that says, the question so nice, Pete answered twice.
100%.
Over to EFedTees.com. All right, up next.
And speaking of people who do not deserve to be mentioned ever again, because they're fired. They're fired. They're so fired, they're in the hell that Tony's going to go to for stealing my gimmick. It's Joe. It's capacity.
Capacity. Well, listen up, Auto Man. Classic Wrestling is the wildest federation going today. Because it's the only home of Papa Wild Thing, brother. Feral Freddy Kilgore. When your wild hearts beat as powerful as Papa Wild's, you can do anything, baby. You can eat lightning. You can crap thunder. ClassicWrestling.com, baby. See what it's all about. Ow!
All right. Well, for starters, Joe, you answered in character. You're fired. And I don't feel I I have the authority to do this, but Mike, you read it in character. You're fired. So
you know what I'm clanging and banging, brother, at the gym. All the Hulkamaniacs are eating their vitamins.
So up next week, it'll be the Efed podcast hosted by Stevie Kendricks and Brian, the producer.
Wait a minute, bruv.
It's a little turnaround callback.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway,
all right.
Up next, now that
Joe, you're fired.
Pat Massidy's fired, a better answer from MDG, Modern Day Gladiators. You can check that over on drivethrurpg.com. It's Warren.
Wildest. It's the same answer Brian had. Running the MWC, but that was totally the Manifest Destiny's fault.
It definitely was. I am perpetually grateful and eternally sorry. If it was not for the nostalgia of that MWC period, I wouldn't be here now. There'd be no Defiance. There might have been an Efed podcast, but I don't know. But hey,
that is a good one.
Love that answer, Warren. Everybody check his Modern Day Gladiators out on drivethrurpg.com. And also, I cannot remember what it's called, but he's got something else going on, some Kickstarter. If you're friends with Warren on Facebook, definitely check it out, please.
Definitely check it out. Modern Day Gladiators at DriveThruRPG. You can now handle Mikey Unlikely in a card game.
Oh shit! Well, I take it back. Don't do that then.
Check it out. Support Warren and the project, and play me, and use the seal chair to beat your opponent down, just like Mikey Unlikely would. All right.
We'll do most of that. Just make Mikey cheat. Make Mikey Unlikely lose. Anyway, up next,
use weapons to win. Okay.
Up next is the mask guy.
That mask guy, not only Brian, is it that mask guy, it's next week's guest on the show. Just recorded that interview with Ed. Excited to bring it to you guys next week here on the Efed podcast. Good stuff. Ed says, where to start? The 101 colony that was based on Chikara, and 90% of the roster was ant-inspired gimmicks. We talked all about that, and what a blast that was.
I hate every word in that sentence.
like they had ant gimmick on ant gimmick. Like Chikara took it this far, and these guys took it 10 steps further. It was so great.
That's so bad.
So Polo Mania, a Lucha Libre company owned by a fried chicken franchise.
All right, I'm out.
Guys, this interview is going to be hot fried fire.
Pollo Fuego.
And then there was my pet project, Hotel California Wrestling, a place where the only things saving humanity are a bunch of wrestlers. God help us all.
Indeed.
This man is into the extreme side of gimmick wrestling, and I absolutely had a blast interviewing him, and I hope you guys enjoy it on the next Efed podcast, episode 81.
And who does he handle over at classic-wrestling.com?
He doesn't.
Oh, missed opportunity.
But he could over at classic-wrestling.com.
Up next.
Speaking of handlers from Classic-Wrestling.
A favorite of ours, a sponsor, a turncoat handler that handles over at Classic-Wrestling and not at DefianceWrestling.com. A big favorite of ours, Alex Smiley.
Alex, he's got something to say as always. Love you, Alex. I submit to you the wonder that was Siberian wrestling.
Oh.
Based in Siberia, the Fed was housed within a fictional prison facility with matches happening in a courtyard and competitors housed in cells, and only an occasional chance to leave. Made for a very unique experience, and anyone involved with the experts will recognize the prison was then used for several events after the Fed's closure. Also, an answer on Twitter. I'm excited to say that obviously it had a lasting impression on e-wrestling, Brian.
Obviously, I mean, we got a solid two solid answers in one. Like, oh shit, I remember that. So, I mean, that's for our pool. That's large. I will say though, your slight misreading. Hooked in cells.
They were hooked in cells. That's a little bit extreme.
That's more interesting. That's some what's that J-Lo movie?
Moving on, Brian.
Up next, well, with a very short little piece to close everything out. Last but not least on Discord, and also the subject of our spotlight. It's damn it. Wait, no, damn it. It's Meg. Damn it.
Oh, damn it. It's Meg. Meg, I'm so excited she joined us for that spotlight. That was so much fun.
It was great.
But Brian, UTA, again, one of my answers, because we went wild.
Wow.
Wild side.
I mean, but it was no prison wild, Meg. Calm down.
It wasn't. We just had matches in Japan and England and New York and Seattle. It was great. All right, guys, that's a wrap for the Efed Podcast Question of the Week. You can catch it each and every week on the Twitter machine, twitter.com/the Efed Podcast. And of course, again, on the Efed Podcast Discord, which you can find in the Twitter profile. Thanks, and we'll see you next week. If you answer the question of the week, we'll feature you on the show. All right, everybody, welcome back to another edition of the Efed Podcast interview series. Today, we're joined by Kevin. Kevin is the handler of the Flying Frenchie in the FWO, former handler, and current handler of All Business Alex Bruder in classic-wrestling.com. Kev, so glad to have you on the show today. How you doing, buddy?
I'm doing really well. How are you?
I am doing really well also. And cool story, Kev, the whole reason that you're on the show today is because somebody else mentioned you on the podcast.
Yeah, I remember that coming up at the time. And did that make me listen to the podcast? It did. It definitely did.
Of course
they talked about me. Okay.
Well, I have to listen now, I guess.
Clearly.
This sounds like a great podcast. Anyway.
It has a lot of mainstream appeal in my household.
Well, we had one of our former guests mention your character as one of their favorites all time back in the FWO days. And I was excited to finally get a hold of you. Then you joined our Discord and became part of the conversation. And then finally, when I opened up an Efed, you jumped at it.
I did.
So we're going to get into all of that, your long, illustrious career, and much, much more.
Fantastic. Sorry, I'm bad at this.
No, you're good. You're good. So, Kev, tell me about how you became a fan of professional wrestling.
I had some family members or friends of family. You know, we'd stay at their house every so often, and their older son watched wrestling. And as a kid, you're just generally aware of it, right? You know who Hulk Hogan is before you've ever watched a wrestling match. But he was watching Superstars on a Saturday morning, and the Texas Tornado was the IC champion. Thankfully, because otherwise I'd have no idea when this was. So it turns out that's around 1990.
Yeah, I was going to say early 90s for sure.
Yeah, so it was just a kind of a thing in the background for a while. And then as I got a little bit older, I got a little bit more interested in it, and I started watching, the weekend shows because, it was on after church. I mean, that's when it was, right?
Yeah.
And, suddenly we had cable, so, let's watch Raw. This wasn't good Raw, by the way. Some of the people listening, I'm assuming, are younger than me. I hope a fair amount of them are younger than me. But when I was watching Raw, I distinctly remember an episode that had 2 matches. One was a doink squash. One was a wonder blade squash. Right? It was not the show you're watching now. No matter how much you may dislike 3 hours of Raw right now, it is not a doink squash followed by a wonder blade squash. You're watching something better.
It used to be Kamala versus Repo Man, and now it's
and that was the main event.
Otherwise, it was Joe Schmo versus Yokozuna, and he was dying in 2 seconds.
Both of them were, yes. Mm-hmm. Joe Schmo was taking the bonsai drop, and Yoko had to move.
It was unfortunate for everybody involved.
Yeah.
So, Kev, you became a fan back then in the early 90s, and you followed it for some time. What about into the Attitude Era? Were you a fan then?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was I was a teenager going into college, and here's a guy who floats up a middle finger, and here are guys who point at their dicks, and I'm the target audience.
Perfect. Yeah.
But again, I'm in college now. We have basic cable in the dorms, so you can watch Raw, you can watch Nitro. It's just constant, right? It was just peak time to watch this stuff. I'm sure I'm looking back at, with the rose-colored glasses where you're very excited about when you're, it's something you look forward to during the week. Ooh, Austin's going to do something. And I'm sure watching back now, you go, hey, he's basically doing the same 3 things. Good for him.
Yeah, it's a little different through adult eyes than it was through a kid's eyes at the time.
But I bought it, right? I 100% bought it.
Yeah. Absolutely.
So, who's to say they were doing it wrong?
So you watched wrestling throughout the 90s and into the early 2000s. Who were some of your favorite wrestlers?
Favorites? I like the guys you were supposed to like, especially at the younger age. Like I love Bret Hart. I love the 1-2-3 Kid. I loved Razor Ramon. I loved Kevin Nash. I even loved him when when he had his kind of tweener run after he lost the title.
Yep.
I loved Sid when he beat up on Shawn Michaels. I love Shawn Michaels for a time, but even as a kid, you watch the Jose Lothario stuff and go, but Shawn Michaels is cool. Why is he hanging out with this guy?
This old guy.
This guy isn't cool.
And then he did the bar press, and you're like, okay, I get it.
Yeah. But it was, I especially as a younger kid, I liked all the people you'd expect to like. I came in a little bit after Hogan, like when I really started watching, so he was never my guy. Macho Man was never my guy. I can watch back now and go, oh yeah, those were good, but they weren't mine.
They weren't your time, yeah.
Yeah.
So you are a fan throughout the era, and basically anybody they tell you to like, you're into.
Well, very much so. And then as you get a teenager, you're older, and you're like, oh well, this bad guy, he's pretty awesome.
Yeah, he's pretty cool.
Of course, I love the NWO. Why would you not have loved the NWO? There's a reason why you'd see those shirts in actual public.
Exactly. Right? Yeah, they were cool, quote unquote.
They were.
Yeah.
I loved those guys. I loved the people you expected people to love, right? I had my favorites who were a little bit less appreciated, but you loved the people that they pushed out there, right? They were getting the airtime. They got the cool lines. They had the fun matches. They had the cool moves. Right? I'm not going to pretend I'm some sort of, fancy schmancy, work rate.
Yeah.
Oh, he gets 3 rotations before he locks in his hip toss. Right? It's cool. I loved it. Did I love the cruiserweights? Yes, very much so. Why would you not? But I also wasn't buying like a La Parka t-shirt.
Yeah, you're into the show.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's cool though. So how did you find this weird wild world of e-fetting?
A friend of mine had belonged to one on AOL. For you youngsters, AOL was the internet.
That was it for a long time.
It was. And he was involved with it, and he was telling me about it. I didn't have internet at the house, which is weird because I have it constantly with me all the time now.
Yeah.
Right. But this is 96, 97. Like I didn't have it. It wasn't an appliance the way it is now.
Yes.
Right now, it'd be like saying, I don't have electricity coming in.
What? Yeah. I don't have the internet. What?
But back then, you just didn't. No matter how many free CDs they sent out,
yes,
sometimes just did not have it.
That's right.
And it's what we would call now a pick-based fed, though I had no idea. what any of this stuff was.
Yep.
So he's got a character that looks like the Undertaker, but isn't the Undertaker. And he's telling me about it. I'm like, that sounds neat, but it also sounds very, very weird. Because it does. It does sound very weird.
Well, yeah.
But you're the Undertaker. Well, no, I'm not the Undertaker, but I'm kind of like the Undertaker. But the picture, I know what the Undertaker looks like. I'm not the smartest guy you've ever met, but that is definitely the Undertaker. It's like, no, my guy's called Brimstone. That's a totally different guy. It's like, but he does like zombie stuff. Oh yeah, okay, cool, we're good. So that's how I was introduced to it. I wasn't able to participate because, I couldn't.
Lack of interwebs, yes.
Yes.
You were not on the information superhighway.
Yeah. In 2021, I didn't have access to the internet. It's a weird sentence. In 1997, it's, well, why would you?
Yeah. Who does? Yeah.
Yeah.
We all had one friend who had the internet at first.
This was my friend. This was the guy who had a DVD player. He was the only person I ever knew who owned a TurboGrafx 16. Right. If there was something cool, he had it.
Yep. So you find out about eFeds. When do you start dabbling?
So I got into eFeds in 98. Because again, my freshman year of college, I'd gone off to college. Suddenly there's a lot of free time. Because you're in classes maybe 4 hours a day. I had a job every, maybe I was working 16 hours a week on top of that.
Tough life.
Right. It's great. By the way, I have no idea what the audience is, right? If it's a lot of people my age or a lot of younger people, but if you're in high school now about to go into college, yes, do that and enjoy it. It's never going to be like that ever again. But right, there's a lot of free time, and I would go to a lot of, this is peak wrestling time, and I would go to all the wrestling boards, and they used to have web rings. Do you remember web rings?
Yeah, so like one thing would lead into another thing, right?
Absolutely. So you'd go to, Stunner's news board where they would post something from, the Observer. And that would link to some other news board that would post something from the Observer. And then another news board this would post something from PW Torch. So totally different reporting. And somehow I stumbled across a site called The Other Arena, or TOA, which I guess was itself a spinoff of, I think AOL had a page called The Arena, which was their wrestling forum.
Okay.
And these people had been there, and they didn't like the moderators, and then suddenly there was an actual website you could build yourself. So it became a discussion forum there, and I got involved in that site because you talk to people who like the things you like.
Yeah, there's no moderators.
And some of them are people like me, some of them are younger teenagers who, I really like Stone Cold Steve Austin, or, I really like this rock guy, or, Hulk Hogan, doesn't he suck? Right? and some of them are like, hey, New Japan's really awesome. Hey, All Japan's super cool. Hey, here's actual life experiences. Right? You talk to a 35-year-old talking to a 16-year-old.
It's like talking to Brunk today. Anybody talking to Brunk.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. That's 100%. So I got onto it through TOA, and just one day on the sidebar of the website, there was a link with just like a poser head there. Eventually it would be Ultraviolet. I think initially it was just a guy with hair.
Yeah.
I didn't know what poser was either. I want to be clear here. I'm saying this with hindsight. At the time, it's like, hey, that's a dude's face. And I clicked on it, and it went to something called the FWO.com. It's like, oh, fantasy wrestling. This is what my buddy does. I could do this.
There you go.
So,
nice.
So I applied, and I guess, yeah. So that's how I initially got involved.
So you immediately associated. This is the thing that I saw before, even though it was poser and not a pick base.
Absolutely, yes.
And so you see the FWO, and incredibly, that's the Fed you're known for being in, and it's the first one you join.
Yes. And I didn't have any sort of base of, again, my background is I knew these things were a thing that existed because my friend was involved in one.
Right.
Beyond that, if there were 30 of them, maybe. If there were 1,000 of them, maybe.
If
this was the second one, I have no knowledge.
The second one.
It could have been. I don't know. I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure. I'm going on the record. It was the second one. It was the one my friend was in.
Yeah.
And then there was the FWO.
You're officially.
And then the FWO was created like a week or two after.
You're officially part of the second Fed that's ever existed.
That is what I'm hearing.
That
is what I have heard.
That is a bold claim, my friend.
I'm just repeating what I have heard me say to other people.
Very good. So you joined the FWO, and talk about your your character, what comes to mind when you first make your character?
So when I'm first making the character, I've never done this before. I'm a teenager. Like, I'm smart for a teenager, but I'm still a teenager.
Yes.
And I'm going, I don't know anything about this. I haven't really done a lot of creative writing. I know I'm not going to be a top of the card guy, right? Why would I be? That doesn't make any sense. But I think this would be fun. So what do I like that isn't the top of the card act? And, well, cruiserweights. Cruiserweights aren't the top of the card act, but in 1998, cruiserweights are awesome.
Yes.
Right? They're the best part of any Nitro you've ever watched. They don't exist in the WWF, but they're the best part of Nitro you've ever watched. So at the time, I had done 4 years of French in high school. I was taking French in college because I needed some language credits, and I'd already done 4 years of French, so I might as well keep going. I'm like, I could be a mass cruiserweight. Mass cruiserweights are fun. I could be French. French people, we hate French people. That's awesome. That's easy. I can put in a couple. I can curse in French, right? I don't have to worry about some being upset if you go merde or putain, right? That's a different language. It's not a swear, right? And it felt so easy. It felt like such an easy way of being like So I created the character, the Flying Frenchie, Pierre Delacroix, and giving you that information, you could probably tell me everything else you need to know about the character.
He's just French stereotypes.
Yeah, he's a French cruiserweight. He's a heel. I always explain to him to other people as if the Mountie were French and a cruiserweight, that's who he is. Right? He cheated. He loved cheating. He was arrogant. He was proud of cheating. He just he was a jerk. But of course he's a jerk. Why would he not be a jerk? He's French.
It's very much, the stereotype that Americans have for French people.
Yeah, and again, if you were watching wrestling, when I came up watching wrestling from the early 90s to now it's the late 90s, how many characters had you seen? Because at that point, you'd go to the video store and, okay, I didn't grow up in the Hogan era, but you can get the tapes, right? Yeah. And that's good for 2 days. And you'd see, how many guys did you see? Oh, this guy's Canadian, or hey, this guy's Italian, or hey, this.
Their heritage was their gimmick.
Yeah, that's all it was.
Yeah.
We're not the Mounties, right? We're the Quebecers. Totally different, legally distinct, right? This guy's Italian, and that's all it is.
Salvatore Sincere, yes.
Yeah. Oh, I love Sal Sincere. I shouldn't have loved Sal Sincere. I love Sal Sincere. I'm sure there are a million different reasons why he was never the biggest guy ever. But as a kid, he's kind of stupid. I love this.
And he was just a big Italian stereotype.
Yeah, but he had the bright colors, and he had the hat, and he worked his name into his catchphrase. It was sincerity, right? That, by the way, my Italian there was about as good as his Italian was.
Yes, your French is better.
Yeah. So. Yeah, so he was the character you'd think he was. He was a cruiserweight. He was French. That was it.
And you went for the comedy.
Oh, it was a higher. Later, it would be less comedy. Earlier on, it was pretty flat, right? It was a lot more comedy. It was doing the accent work. It was, for instance, in his original bio, his trainer was noted mime and wrestling legend Marcel Marceau. Because everyone knows that on top of being one of the greatest minds in the world, he had a world-class wrestling mind. That's just common knowledge.
Common. Yes.
I feel silly even repeating that to you. This basic fact that everyone knows.
That everyone knows. It's not even exclusive to the Efed podcast.
Right. You could ask anyone, any person on the street, and go, "Hey, who's Marcel Marceau?" It's like, that's that mime and that wrestler. Yes,
of course, obviously.
Yeah, a newborn tells you that. They come out and they get a hat and a blanket and they go, "He's our wrestler!" Ah,
a mime. Oh, amazing.
Everyone.
Okay.
Yeah. It's just cultural osmosis at this point.
So you create this new character. He is basically the Flying Frenchie right off the bat. Yeah. And you maintain the same character for how long?
Off and on, mostly on, from 98 to 2009. It was, my first run was 98 to 2005, and at that point, the FWO shut down. And I think I'd like hobbled, a couple of other friends who were still involved would say, hey, come do this or hey, come do that. And fine. And I just like the closest I ever came to was joining a Fed that never actually ran. I'm sure we've all done that.
We've all done that, yeah.
This sounds interesting. It's got these other two guys I've heard of, and this will be fun. And then it just nothing happens.
Show one. Here's the card. And then everybody role plays, and then you just never hear from the guy again.
I'm not sure there was even a first card release. I think it was just the roster release.
They literally released.
Yes. The FW came back in 2009. I came back then. It lasted for about another year. Then it ended, and I was just kind of done at that point, right? There was stuff in between. I'm sure we'll get back to the stuff in between.
Yeah.
But my active career was really 98 to 05 with a couple of minor gaps in there where it's like, hey, I need 2 months off because my brain's going away. Sure. Right. But otherwise, it was pretty consistent for, about 8 years? And then a drop, and then another year, and then until 21.
And so when you're handling the Flying Frenchie, when you're starting off, what are some of the highlights in the FWO for this character?
Like early on or through the whole thing?
Well, I mean, if you've been there for 8 years or 5 years or whatever the case?
Yeah.
So you've been in one Fed that long. What kind of highs do you have? Basically early on, yeah.
Yeah, well, early on, I'd say this is one of the funnier things is the very first show we have, there's a battle royal for the world title, and it's a live chat. And I don't know how this works, and I don't remember being in like the boards or anyone explaining how it works. So I joined it, and I'm like, am I in the chat as the Frenchie? Am I in the chat as Kevin? Like, should I react in character? Should I react as I don't know, and I'm afraid to ask because if I'm supposed to be in character, nothing feels worse than just going, hey guys, how's this going? So I'm just kind of playing it by ear.
What are you doing here?
Right. And so when like a face would get thrown out, I'd just kind of like chuckle. I'd just type in, Frenchie points or Frenchie laughs or haha. And eventually, Travis Bevan, the guy who ran the FWO, he was basically typing live results for this thing. And right before I got thrown out, he added to the commentary. It's like, Frenchie laughs and then gets blindsided and thrown over the top rope. I'm like, this is amazing. This is the greatest thing that's ever happened to anyone.
They're including my character work.
This is fantastic, right? Oh, wow. So early on it was that. The next highlight was he did win the Cruiserweight title pretty early on. Unfortunately, it happened during the summer. And I didn't have the foresight to tell anyone, hey, after the school year ends, I'm not here until August. Like, I don't have the internet.
Yes.
I cannot participate. And I really should have. I should have told someone, right? I think I ended up about 6 weeks after, coming home for school, going to a friend's house and popping on AOL there and just seeing, hey, the website's up. Okay, it's still there. Oh, look, I won the title. Oh, look, I lost the title. Let me reach out to someone real quick. Hey, sorry about that, but I'm kind of out of contact until August 22nd. Please let me come back in August. They let me come back. I had a couple early runs. Again, this was the late 90s, so I had a couple early runs with the hardcore title. But because he's a French comedy character, right, he's not Cactus Jack, he's Norman Smiley.
Yes.
He's
probably a little Crash Holly.
Smiley.
Yeah.
And then the biggest thing for him was shortly after the new year, the main heel of the Federation was wrestling him and to kind of like piss off the powers that be. Because again, it's 1999 and that's what you do. He kicked the crap out of me and then dropped to the mat, pulled me over him, and I win the title. So that's my first FWO World Championship. And I thought it was hilarious. Some of the other people playing found it less funny. There was actually some, I don't want to say outrage. Outrage is too strong a word, but there was some concern backstage at the time that, hey, the world title was just won by a guy who didn't win it, right? I didn't win it cheaply. I didn't cheat. I didn't bribe a referee. I didn't sneak roll him up while someone else's theme music is playing. He had me beat and unconscious and then dropped to the mat and tossed me on top of it, right?
Voluntarily lost.
Yeah. So a lot of people were a little bit upset about that. Meanwhile, there were all the people who were kind of on my level, like within the Fed, right? So the people who were the cruiserweight champions or the internet champions that I'd been kind of clustered with for the last 6 or 9 months, who were all really talented writers too, and all had very interesting characters too, and were kind of locked out of the main event scene because they had kind of, similar to me, they kind of started going, well, I don't know what I'm doing. I don't want to say we were aiming low, but we were
happy to be on the show.
Happy to be on the show and kind of hedging our expectations, right? Like, it's cool that this is happening. We're having fun, and we were. It seemed like everyone was having fun, but at the same time, everyone, you start going, hey, I'm doing just as good a job writing my character as that guy is, right? So how come that guy is in the main event and that guy gets all the cool segments and, I'm not? Like, I can do that. So suddenly when I got elevated to the world title level, all the guys who were kind of fighting at my level on the card are brought up with me, really, because if this guy can win the title, why can't the Ultraviolets or the Black Quicksilvers or Scotty Cooler, Scott Slugger? These are real people. I love all of these guys, by the way. I'm not making fun of them. These are fantastic people and great characters, but they're also e-wrestling characters, so some of them have silly names. Right?
Of course, yes.
But if he's up here, these guys can also be up here, right? So of course, Frenchie, he's an awful heel. I guess at this point I should mention that during the time before he won the title, he'd formed his own heel stable. He'd recruited 2 of the other wrestlers who were Americans who suddenly became very French. We were the French Foundation, again, 1998 to 1999.
Yes.
So they had won the World Tag Champs a little bit before that. Then I win the title. So the very next episode, I come on and I got a marching band playing the French national anthem behind me, and streamers and fireworks, and I'm awful. It's just a total heel move. Look at me, look how fantastic I am. When he tells the story of how he wins it wasn't because someone else chose, that he was defeated and like a puppet was put on top. That's not the way he remembers it. Objective reality does. That's not the way he remembers
No,
it.
the heel should be. I beat him soundly. I tossed him from post to post.
Yeah, absolutely. But with a French accent and a beret.
And a baguette, yes.
Yeah. Oh, at one point he definitely used a loaded baguette as a weapon. Right? Because how could you not?
Mm-mm.
Right? So, and then on my first offense, promptly lose the title. Right? so it was highs and lows.
It comes with the territory. You roll with the punches.
Yeah. And back then, the FWO was a simmed Fed, which, again, I didn't know the difference between any of this stuff. So they had a simulator that they used that, they would come out, oh, this guy won because of this and this guy won because of that. Obviously, some of the things were angled. Didn't know that phrase at the time either. But most of the results were simmed, and I'm pretty sure that my initial loss was just a simmed result, and that's what happens. The way Travis tells the story is initially we did have an actual simulator like they had on the TOA website. Later, he would just, he'd flip a coin, and that's how he decided who won. No one cared, right?
Yeah.
So that was my early career with that.
So at the time in FWO, you mentioned it's kind of angle, it's kind of sim. What you're doing is you're basically telling a character story based on whatever happens. You just roll with whatever happens.
Oh yeah, absolutely. It's like improv but with more lead time. I don't think I had my first fully angled feud until 2000, right? So I started in early 98, all in 98, all in 99, and suddenly I'm looking for the main event of our third, our WrestleMania was ScyberSlam.
Okay.
So I'm looking at, my feud going into that. I'm like, hey, wouldn't it be cool if we did this, and then we did this, and we did this? And the guy I was talking to said, yeah, that sounds cool. And it's like, hey, I was thinking, I'm a masked wrestler. I guess I should back up. This is Ultraviolet. Ultraviolet was handled by a guy named Tim. He was fantastic, right? He was a great writer, great comedy writer. I know I did peek ahead at the questions. I'm going to get a chance to talk about him more later.
As we get in, yeah.
But just a fantastic writer and a fantastic character, but he had like bright purple hair. That was his thing. He had like bright purple shoulder length hair, maybe even like shoulder blade length hair. And Frenchie was a masked character, and we'd been feuding off and on because he was a dimwit, lovable guy, and I'm a jerk ass French guy.
Of course, right? Yes.
So I didn't like him because he's American and he's dumb. Like all Americans are dumb, but he's the most dumb, so he's the most American, so I hate him. And he didn't really hate me so much as he disliked me because I'm a bad guy, right? He's not really the sort of person who hates someone, but I should be a better person, and he takes that a little personally. So we decided, hey, can we, for our big pay-per-view coming up, and we're angling this out 3 months ahead of time, which I'd never done, right? I'd never done, like, maybe next week we can do this. It's like, oh, wow, maybe we can do a hair versus mask match. It's like, that sounds like fun, but I don't want to lose my hair. It's like, oh, no, I was 100% going to lose on the heel. Come on. Like, I'm going to lose my mask. You're going to keep your hair. It's like, oh, yeah, that's fine. So, and that's how Frenchie then ended up losing his mask. Yeah, I think that's it for now.
So you mentioned that's the third CyberSlam.
Yeah.
So it's the big show of the year. You've got a mask versus hair match, and Frenchie loses his mask. That's quite the blow off for the big show. I like that.
It was a big blow off for that show. It was a big match for us. It had a really fun storyline building up to it, where, like, because we've both been in the Federation. I keep saying Federation. It sounds dumb. We've both been in the Efed since the beginning. We're both opening day members. And he had a love interest that he was going to marry on CyberSlam 3, right? They were going to have their wedding like all wrestlers do on the show. Right? Because that's just what you do.
That's just what you do in wrestling. Yeah, you get married in the ring.
Right. Just like if there's a cake, someone goes into the cake. Otherwise, why have a cake?
Why have the cake?
Right.
Why make it Bobby Dean size if you're not going to throw someone through it?
No. And if you're going to throw Bobby Dean in it, it might have to be like 4 or 5 Bobby Dean sizes.
That's right.
Otherwise, it's lost. The whole visual's lost, and it's a blown opportunity. So he had a love interest. His name was Ultraviolet. Her name was Violet. She had a whole family of sisters that were all named after various flowers. Like this guy had just like a stable of characters that he would just pull into and out of role plays. It was amazing. I wish I had that talent. And so leading up to it, like starting in maybe like January, Violet, I want to say CyberSlam was an April show. So I think around January, Violet starts getting like, backstage, she receives a thing of flowers and they're purple. Oh, she gets some candy. Oh, how thoughtful. It starts ramping up and like it gets a little risque. And, one day the present is like some purple lingerie and, she's a little flustered by it, but she's still very into it. And she assumes it's from her fiance, until Frenchie reveals himself and goes, oh no, all those gifts are from me because of how in such high regard I hold you in. And in the moment, she buys into it. For a moment, she's won over. Because he is charming. Like, he's an asshole, but he's a French asshole. You buy it.
It's romantic, right? Yes.
So they kiss. For a second, she buys into it. She, falls into his arms. They kiss. And she immediately, recoils and realizes she's done something terrible and she's in the wrong. And she can in no way let her future husband see this. Meanwhile, Frenchie's just happy as a pig in shit because he just did this. He hates Ultraviolet, right? He doesn't like a lot of people. He's a heel, but he hates this guy. And now he just got one up on him.
A big one.
And by the way, you should never try and steal someone's fiance to, get revenge for them for being an American. Just as a more sort of thing.
In general, don't do that.
Right. Just don't do that. That is a bad thing. He's a bad person for having done that.
But if you're in wrestling,
he's a bad person. Yes, but in wrestling, right, within the context of the storyline. So, like all wrestlers, Ultraviolet doesn't actually watch the show, so he doesn't know this is happening.
He's busy backstage.
Frenchie's trying to get the master tape for it so he can show it during on the Travistron, which was another thing we did that. In there was that everything was named after Travis and he hated it. It just made us name more things after him. So the WWF had the Titantron, so we had the Travistron. They had Titan Towers, so we had Travis Towers, right? I at one point tried getting over Travis Towers West just as another office building because he hated when we did that. And if you give a bunch of 19 to 24-year-olds hey, please don't do this.
They're going to do it.
They're going to do that. Yes, absolutely. don't ever talk to anyone who's between 19 and 25. That's another tip for you kids. It's just a bad idea.
The more you know.
Yeah. Listen, I'm older. I've learned these. These are hard-learned lessons. Just, you shouldn't do it. So one of the other characters in the Fed who had recently joined, like he was relatively newer, and I'd worked with him in another Fed that another one of the FWO handlers had for 6 months, right? So he had just come in. This other Fed closes, and some of his handlers come over, and this guy's a character named Mike Bear. He's handled by a guy named Mike Bear, which makes it super easy to remember. Like, I will tell stories of, I was wrestling this guy. I have no idea who he was, right? But if you have the same name as your character, I'm generally going to remember that. I'm pretty decent with that. So he steps in as kind of like the baby face of the month. He comes in, so, gets the tape from Frenchie, and they end up having a match to see, if you don't, if I win, I get to destroy this tape, and if you win, you get to have it. Knowing full well that if Frenchie gets it, he's going to show it to Ultraviolet, and it's going to be a whole thing.
Of course.
Frenchie loses that match, which you think is like a terrible setback, right? Like, oh, you don't no longer have this evidence, but Frenchie is also like every other wrestler in that he doesn't watch the show. And it turns out that his trainer in storyline, once I got past Marcel Marceau, I established that his trainer was actually a woman in France who was the daughter of a legendary French wrestler who never really got a chance to succeed because she was the daughter of the wrestler, not the son of, but was still very talented and ended up, like a lot of wrestlers, you didn't really succeed, but you know how to do it, so you teach other people how to do it.
Of course.
So it's his trainer, but they're French, so they're madly in love too, because that's just, how could you not be? So after he loses the big pay-per-view match where he doesn't get the tape, she calls him up and says, I record the show every week, right? I will just send you my copy. You did not have to fight someone for this. So the babyface gets the victory, not even the moral victory. The babyface got the victory, but Frenchie's a cheating heel, so he essentially ignores the stipulation of the match. Okay, you get that copy, but I've got this copy, and he ends up showing it to Ultraviolet, who takes it as well as you'd expect him to, which is how they end up getting into this mask versus hair match, which, again, does not end well for Frenchie because he's the heel, and generally it does not end well for him.
I like it. And so Frenchie loses his mask and sets on to a second era in the FWO.
Very briefly. So he loses his mask, and shortly after that, the French Foundation, which was the Flying Frenchie, Primetime, and Mitch Wilson. Primetime had a last name. I do not remember it because, again, I am very old. Primetime was I won't say he was this younger guy, but I was 19, 20 at the time. He was probably like 17, 18. But he was in high school. He had originally come in with his own group called the Primetime Players, Primetime and the Showstopper and the Shocker, and they sucked. like I don't know what they submitted to get into the FWO, but even then, the FWO had some people going, "Oh, this is really good Fed. Oh, they've got high quality. Oh, I love the writers here." And there were a lot of really good writers. There are a lot of really good writers everywhere. If you were in a better EFED, you probably were. I don't know. I didn't read that one. Right? I read this one. A lot of really good writers there. And a lot of people want to join, which made us think, oh, this must be good because a lot of people want to join. These guys sucked out loud. Right? I always go back to what's some of the worst writing you've ever read in EFEDs. And one of them was doing a role play where he was having sex with Cindy Crawford in his mansion, and maybe two of those words were spelled correctly. Right? It was sex, SCCKS, with Cindy Crawford, SINDYCRAWFERD, in my mansion, MANSHUN.
Whoa. Slow down.
This was 20 years ago, and I remember it.
Slow down. I'm taking notes here. I got a new character idea.
Yeah. So her name is Cindy Crawford's mansion. She's just Cindy Crawford's mansion. Right? She's not a woman. She's just a mansion.
She's a brick house.
Yeah. She's funky. Is she letting it all out? She is. These guys were awful, but there was something to Brian, right? There was just, you get the sense of it, like, oh, he's pretty good at this. So I kind of wrote them in. It's like, listen, the guys you are with, they're not good. They're just not good. And you're good. You should play with people who are good. And that's telling the story now. I'm kind of an asshole. but in reality, I'm kind of an asshole. But he's like, no, that sounds fine. We can do this thing together. Mitch Wilson was another handler, Scott Wasner, I believe, who had already, like, Mitch Wilson was his third character in the Fed, right? He was Scott Slugger. He was a pit fighter named Ice. And he was this guy, Mitch Wilson, who initially was like a, surfer dude. And I'm like, hey, we can do something here, which is how we all get together. And they immediately both adopt French accents, which I didn't ask them to do, but they did, and it was hilarious, so we went with it. And they, they're immediately, yeah, France is the best, and America sucks, right? So after the loss to Ultraviolet at CyberSlam, I'm forgetting the timeline a little bit, but the French Foundation breaks up. I'm pretty sure I got turned on. I don't necessarily remember that I turned face so much as I was the heel that got turned on, which is not the best look. I think I was kind of the de facto face in the feud, but not because I was a good guy doing good things, but because my dickhead friends were dickheads to me. And that ended up leading, so we initially broke up, and that led to a storyline where all of us had almost all of the titles. Because again, we're 2.5 years into this run, and there's only so much stuff you can do. One of those things you can do is win titles.
Of course. I guess we'll win a title.
Yeah. So all three of the characters had somehow managed to be one win away from winning the Grand Slam, and being the first wrestler in the FWO to do it. And I ended up not being the guy who did it. I want to say Mitch ended up being the guy who did it. But when I say all the titles, I mean, like, we were all at one point the women's champion. Because we needed to get the titles, right?
Of course.
And I ended up losing that, and I think Primetime started his own heel stable, really to kind of get back at me and lord over me, and we ended up going up until about December of that year, where we had he was the world champion at the time, and we had a world title / retirement match. So one person was going to leave the match, or career match. One person was going to leave the match, the champion, and the other one was out of the FWO. As you may have caught by me saying, well, I was nearing the end of my story here. I did not win that one either. Right? So Primetime wins. He's the world champion. He has vanquished his former mentor, his former stablemate. He is King Crap of Turd Mountain. And Frenchie's done with the FWO. And about a week and a half later, I started with the Champions Wrestling League, which was kind of the next FWO.
You say the next FWO. Why is that?
It was led by a guy named Ed Wilson, who had been a character. He actually had been like 5 or 6 characters in the FWO. The biggest one was, I want to say, the problem was I've never heard it said. I've only seen it written. Right? It was.
That's half of my problems to the Efeds.
Right. It was. I want to say it was Machina, Machina. So he was a character named Machina, who's the leader of the Lone Gunmen, who were Rudo and Sano, and Total Eclipse, who's a big fat guy, and just a bunch. Like, he had like a stable of 4 or 5 guys, and they were comedy jobbers, right? And this guy was a fantastic writer. Like, he was just legitimately good at this. And he had decided he wanted to start his own Fed, that the FWO had started going a little bit more away from a lot of the comedy that he was doing at the time, and he felt a little out of place. So he started his own Fed. Travis Bevan, who had stepped down from Fed heading the FWO, had done the site design for him and the posers for him because they were friends in real life. I think 1 or 2 other FWO handlers had gone over, including Tim, who had handled Ultraviolet, and one of Tim's friends who had handled a character called the Mad Trucker. And it became, this is, a little less serious, a little bit more like the earlier FWO had felt to some of us, with just a little bit more comedy. And with, Ed was a huge part of the early FWO. I was a big part of the early FWO without, it sounds a little bit like me slapping myself on the back, but legitimately I had been. So it kind of felt like, it's the same level of writing, it's the same caliber of characters, but it's just going in a slightly different direction.
You're seeing some of the same handlers, you're seeing some of the same characters, and I can see why you're saying it's the second FWO because it has the same feel.
Yeah.
Okay. So, I mean, you move over to this new Fed, and Do you find success right away, or how does Frenchie fit in?
Frenchie fit in really well. Ed had been super kind to me because we immediately have a tournament for the championship because that's what you do when you have a federation, right?
I've heard that.
That is the thing. Yeah, I've heard that as well. And I told him, listen, I got a little hung up on the titles and the wins kind of near the end of my role and, and my run in the FWO. And I'd legitimately been upset that my character wasn't the one who won the Grand Slam championship. And that's a dumb thing to be upset about. It is. It is. Now, in my defense, I was 19, 20, 21, right? Again, if you're 2021, someone says you're immature, you're going to punch them. You're going to punch them because you're immature.
And then you're going to yell at them because you're immature, yes.
But you're 21 and you're not a kid anymore. You're an adult. You're a young man. You're vibrant and vital. And you know everything. And you know a lot of things, but you're not quite there yet. I'm 42 now. I'm not quite there yet. But I recognized in myself that it wasn't healthy. I recognized in myself that I'd overreacted to something that was important to me, but ultimately didn't matter. What mattered was I was having a good time with my friends. So I'd ask that. It's like, listen, I have no idea what you're planning on doing with the world title tournament. Can I go out in the first round, please? Can I, please? And he's like, yeah, that's fine. For all I know, I was always going to, right? And maybe this just saved him a little bit of heartache and going, oh man, Kevin asked if he could join my Fed. I told him yes. He said nice things about my writing, and I said nice things about his writing.
I didn't mean it though.
Yeah, but I was going to bounce him in the first round, right? So I didn't have to do that. So Frenchie drops out really early at the title and immediately runs into a problem with I don't know what the proper phrase is here. So if I use the improper phrase, understand I'm speaking from a place of ignorance and not hate. But it was a dwarf wrestler. There was a guy named Big Little Italy. And he was a midget. And immediately he and Frenchie, kind of rubbed horns. He was a face, I'm a bad guy, and we immediately come to blows, which was fantastic for me because I played a cruiserweight. And, over time, I'd update the bio every once in a while and suddenly he's 10 pounds heavier, right? He's bulking up to get out of the division. He's wrestling in the heavyweight division. So, he got a little stronger. He put on a little mass, right? But now he's wrestling a guy who's legitimately 90 pounds lighter than him and probably 2.5 feet shorter. So I get to do all the monster spots that you don't get to do unless you're a monster, right? Does he lawn dart him like Rey Mysterio got lawn darted? Yes, he does.
Of course.
Does he pick him up by the arms and legs and spin him around and chuck him into other things? Absolutely. He just goes beast mode on this guy because he can and because he's awful, right?
He's never had the opportunity to be in this position.
Right. No, he is 100%. Suddenly he's Andre the Giant. And he's never been that, right? He's been competitive. I always wrote him as if, he was a good wrestler, but he cheated because why wouldn't you cheat?
Because it's easier.
Right?
Yeah.
Right. Yes. He could win without cheating, but why would you do that? Right? I have an office on the 3rd floor. I could take the stairs, but the elevator's right there. And they both accomplish the same thing. I'm going to take the elevator. I could out wrestle you, or I could thumb you in the eye, knee you in the groin, and get you in a schoolboy. One of those sounds a lot easier. Let's try that one first. Right? I could beat you fair and square, but I got 2 friends on the outside of the ring, so I'm going to let them beat you fair and square, and then I'm going to beat you.
Yes.
Right? That was just how the character was written. But yeah, he was good at this. I always feel like all wrestlers should be portrayed as being good at wrestling. Otherwise, they should be doing something else.
They are professional wrestlers.
Yes, you're right. They're not hobbyist wrestlers. They're professional wrestlers. But he cheated because of cheating. So even now he's fighting in dwarf, and he's going to cheat fighting the dwarf, and he's going to overpower the guy because again, I think the character was 6'4", 240, give or take, and Big Little Italy was neither of those things. So Frenchie's just, whooping him pillar to post, and they lead up to the first CWL pay-per-view, which I think was called Revolution. And they have their bout, and do you want to guess who wins?
I'm going to say the Frenchie wins.
The Frenchie does, in fact, not win, because he's a bastard heel who's taking on a guy smaller than him.
Bad guy loses again.
Yeah, bad guy loses. And I'm pretty sure, if I remember the finish, Big Little Italy had his foot up on the ropes. So, 100% a taste of your own medicine victory. And it was fun. I had so much fun with that, right? Because I think that, again, this handler guy named, I want to say it was Tony, really nice guy, really got into it, really had the spirit of it. Because I made sure, I wasn't mocking him, right? But he had a character who was 1.5 feet shorter than everyone else, maybe 2 feet shorter than everyone else. He knew this going in. So a lot of the character work was, haha, I'm bigger and tougher than you, neener. But ultimately, he was going to be the guy who walked out with the win. So he was perfectly okay with, I have no idea what his second feud would have looked like. He would have done amazing with it, but I have no idea what it would have looked like. Unfortunately, shortly after the first pay-per-view, Ed Wilson had been struck and killed by a car. And, I don't know if you've ever done this. I don't know what your routine looked like in 2001. But mine was, I'd get up, I'd go to the computer lab because I'm in college, I'd get on the websites, I'd look up my Efed websites, I'd look up the news sites, I'd look up ESPN, right, all that stuff. And I go to the CWL homepage, and the CWL homepage has this news that Ed Wilson has passed away. Travis had updated it because Travis had, he was a friend of him in real life. And it was just the easiest way for him to tell everyone, listen, I don't want, this sounds impersonal when I say it this way. It was not meant impersonally, right? But it was the easiest way to tell everyone at once, listen, I don't know what's happening with this website. I don't know what's happening with this roster. I don't know, but you should know that Ed has passed away. And Ed was the linchpin behind this. I think there was some talk backstage about, well, maybe so-and-so could run this, or maybe we could ask Travis to run it, or maybe one of us could run it. I don't remember if Travis had even chimed in. I don't think he was interested in doing it. He just, as a time, right? There's a reason why he'd stopped running the FWO, right? It's a time sink.
Oh, absolutely. Yes.
It's a lot of work.
It is a lot of work, yes.
And that was a weekly show. The FWO had been a 2 shows a week show. It's just a ton of effort. And I think we all kind of decided this was Ed's story, because while we're all doing our regular wrestling stuff, he's continuing his story that he'd been running essentially nonstop since the beginning of the FWO. And it wasn't right to keep going. So I think we'd done a blooper show after the pay-per-view, which was a funny thing we'd done once or twice in the FWO, where you go, hey, remember when you saw this segment? Here's the first tape of it that didn't go right. Right? So we'd done the pay-per-view, we'd done the blooper show. I think there was going to be a week off in between that. I think we did the first show of the second story arc. And I believe, if I have the timing right, that's when Ed passed away. And then the Fed just kind of closed. And it was sad, right? It's sad. And it's sometimes harder when it's something like this, because if your grandpa passes away, that's sad, but you have this whole life experience with grandpa, right? But Ed Wilson was another name in your email, right? He was another guy you sent an email to, sent an IM to, you chat with occasionally. And he was always very giving, always very kind, always had great advice. Whether you listened to it or not, it was great advice. If you gave him something, he would listen to that too. Even if your advice sucked, he'd listen to it, right? But just a really solid guy. I remember shooting him an email at one point telling him, I always liked your writing, and I couldn't quite put my finger on it, just your style. And I was rereading The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, which is kind of a classic sci-fi comedy British thing. And it's one of those books where people who love it, right? And other people just never heard of it, right? It wasn't a huge hit, but it had its fit, right? And I realized that he had kind of borrowed a turn of a phrase. There's a phrase in Hitchhiker's Guide, the spaceship hung in the air the way a brick wouldn't, right? And he had said something very similar, and I had drawn the connection. It's oh man, no one caught that. I love that book. So we just, just one of those, it was 3 sentences in an email, right? It wasn't a huge connection, but we'd known each other online for 2.5, 3 years. And now this person that you kind of know, but don't really know, is gone.
Yeah. It's weird in e-wrestling. You can talk to people every single day, more than your real friends.
Yeah.
But you just look at them a different way. But then when you lose one, you kind of step back and realize, whoa, I lost a friend.
Yeah, and you almost feel guilty that you feel bad about it, because I think he was married. If he wasn't married, he was in a committed relationship. This person had a much bigger loss, right?
Yeah, right.
He had parents. His parents had a much bigger loss. I don't know if he had siblings, right? I didn't know him enough to go, hey, do you have a brother and sister? It just had never come up.
You don't know what these guys look like.
Right. No, I could not have picked him out of a police lineup, but I loved this guy, right? He was a fantastic writer who made me laugh. And at a time when I was kind of like doing harm to myself in the hobby of e-wrestling, right? Like I had been putting myself in a bad emotional state, being hung up about things that at the end of the day didn't matter, right? He looked past that and said, yeah, I've worked with you. I can work with you again. It'll be cool. It'll be a lot of fun. And it was cool. And it was a lot of fun. And I appreciated that, right? But then you go turn to someone else. You turn to your college dorm mate and go, oh, a friend of mine just died. Well, who died? It's like, well, this guy played video games with online, right? That's the easiest way to explain it to someone.
Yep.
If you don't go to my go-to explanation of it, it's like Dungeons and Dragons, except you're half naked and you're pretending to fight, right? Because that's really what it is. But that can get some awkward stares, and now you're not allowed to talk to Graham at Thanksgiving anymore. So he was gone, and I fell out of Efeds for a little bit, a couple of months.
Sure.
Because this was the one I did. Sorry, I'm I don't want to.
No, you're good.
I don't want to minimize. Like, he was an important part of my life for a brief period of time, and there's just a lot of stuff around after he passed that went around in some of the circles I was in at the time. Like, some people were like, "Oh, Ed Wilson didn't really die. He just didn't want to run the Fed anymore." Or Ed Wilson wasn't a real person. It was just Travis Beevan's alternate identity, right? So that he could handle a character without it being a big deal. And some of that was just people being dumb, right? Sometimes you're misinformed, right? And sometimes it's people just trying to get a reaction. And I'm sitting here going, man, if you'd ever emailed either of these two guys, you'd know they're different people.
Right.
Right. Travis Beevan is a wonderful guy who I've had, several real life phone conversations with, and who I went to Disney World a couple of years back. He sent my kids some Disney World pirate, swag that showed up in our hotel room. I can tell you this, Mikey, I have never once sent someone who went to Disney World any swag. That has happened 0 times.
Yes.
Right? Travis Beevan would listen to me when I'd send him an email because I had a bad college breakup, because he was an adult I knew who could tell me things would be better, but who I didn't really know, so I didn't feel ashamed if I saw him later. Right? He was an adult who was willing to talk to a 20-something, an 18-year-old, and kind of as I was growing up. But you send him an email and you'd have like this, here's 4 pages on what I want to do with the character. Or here's an idea I've got for a segment, or I want to do this thing. And it's, well, maybe not 4 pages. It was like 5 or 6 paragraphs. And his response would be like, okay. Right? Your email back would be, yes. Okay. And Ed, you'd send him an email and you get half a novel back from him.
Yeah.
It's clearly not the same dude. But at the time, it would pop up every once in a while, and mostly from trolls, right? They come into our community and go, oh, you're sad about a thing that didn't happen.
Yep.
And I'm like, you asshole.
And it's because in e-fedding, a lot of people have ridiculously faked those situations.
Yeah, and I didn't know that.
Yeah,
right? Because
it's unbelievable.
Was this circle. But I'm also sitting here going, you piece of shit. I am 6'4" and I am 230 pounds, and you are welcome to come to DeKalb, Illinois, and you can tell me that there. Right? Here's my address, and here's when I will be available if you are interested in repeating this in person.
I will enjoy engaging you in fisticuffs.
I did not say that part.
Yes.
If you want to assume that part, well, that's on you. Also, I look fondly back upon the days when I was 230 pounds. But, right, it was just a thing that really got my goat at the time. And unfortunately, it became, it didn't happen a lot. It happened a handful of times. But every time you're just sitting there going, you're a piece of shit. And you don't know if they're just repeating something they've heard or if they're just a troll looking for the attention, because they know if you say something awful,
everyone's going to argue. Yeah, exactly.
Right. And now you're important because someone else is talking to you. Not that I'm important, right? I'm just another person. But you got my goat and you got me to react, and I have an emotional attachment to you now, and you don't care what the emotion is. I had a reaction and you got that. Good for you, right? So that was that. I wish that could have gone so much longer, not just because, God, if we could have kept that, but it was such a good group of people. I think you did an interview with Andy Blox, and I think that was the last place he went.
Yes.
I think it's I'm going to get his name wrong here because I'm old and not because I'm trying to run the gimmick of how disappointed I was in his interview. I think it was Jamar.
Yeah, Jamar Short. Yep.
Thank you, Jamar Short. He was in there. He does not like the Frenchie. And
No.
I cried about that. I was doing a bit. I thought I was doing a bit. And he's like, I don't really know you, so I didn't know you were doing a bit. It's like, we were in the FWO together for years. Like, yeah, but that's it. Right? We didn't really do it. Like, we were in the same backstage section. And we didn't really interact. But you're sitting there going, but we were there this whole time. It's like, yeah, I recognize you. I can acknowledge you. I don't know you. That's fair. Right? So I ended up in, I think, July of that year. So that was, I'd say, maybe March, maybe May, somewhere around there when the CWL closed because of Ed's passing. And I just kind of got in the itch. It's like, I love this character. I love this hobby. I love my community. The people I work with are people I enjoy working with, and they're people I enjoy BSing with, right? Because sometimes it's about e-wrestling, and sometimes it's about real wrestling, and sometimes it's just stupid jokes. And online, people have to see my stupid joke. They don't have to react to it. They have to see it.
They have to scroll past it anyway.
They do. There are words. There are letters. They're written in order. You don't have to interact with it, but it's there. So I reached out to Jeremy, who was the guy running the FWO at the time, and who had been the guy running the FWO when I left. Say, hey, listen, I know I was in kind of a shitty mood at the end when I left. I know that I told you I was just kind of done with e-fedding, and 2 weeks later I'm in Ed's Fed. That was a douchebag move, right? It was. But I also want to tell the story with Primetime. And I'm like, well, if I tell him I'm just going to be in someone else's e-fed, maybe he doesn't let me do that. He probably would have let me do it anyways, right? But I'm a kid and I'm dumb and I wasn't sure.
He thought it was exclusive back then.
Yeah. And Frenchie popped around a few other places during that time, but the FWO had always been his home fed, right? So he's like, yeah, sure, come in. In fact, we've got a new stable coming in. We've got a new heel stable, and you'd be a great fit for it. I'm like, cool. So the end of the July pay-per-view goes off, and at the end of the championship match between the Boston Strangler, again, just another amazing character, just menacing. I would say he was the FWO's Undertaker if the Undertaker talked more. But he had just kind of that presence, the same sort of menacing, imposing, this is a dangerous person. And Eric Kelly, who was kind of a big lunkhead muscle guy, but also big and dangerous because he's a big lunkhead muscle guy. So they have a big match. I want to say it was a cage match. One of them wins. It doesn't matter. It wasn't me. And the lights go out, and suddenly there are three masked men in the ring. They've all got ski masks on. And one of them hits a high angle power bomb, and one of them hits a DDT where the guy's head's trapped within a figure four, and the last guy is hit by a top rope leg drop. And one by one, they reveal one guy takes his mask off, and it's like, oh, that's Primetime. Primetime's here. And another guy takes his mask off, and oh, that's Rick Cronus. Rick Cronus had been another character that I did a lot of stuff with later. Great guy, great writer, just a fun character. And this was his big heel turn, if I remember right. And finally, the third guy's pulling off his mask. It's Frenchie. And the show goes off the air. I don't know how you write that. I couldn't have written that. But it was written the way you would have seen it, right? Of, oh, the announcer's talking, but we've run out of time. And that was the beginning of one of my favorite periods of my career, the stupid names for tag teams period. So we were in a stable called Threevil, 3VIL. It's like evil, but there's three of us. I did not name that one. I will not take credit for it, but every time I got a chance to top it, I tried to top it in dumb tag team names.
Hit me.
Okay. dumb tag team names I was in after that. I was in the Elitists, which is less dumb. That's kind of okay. That's baseline. Okay. I was in with Rick Kronos, the World Peace Organization. We didn't have any gimmick about it. That was just our name. Our name was just, we were bad guys doing terrible things. We're the World Peace Organization. With the character Mike Bear I'd mentioned later, I'd had a face turn at some point. I'm sure we'll double back around to that. We were in a tag team called the Winners of This Match.
The winners of this match are the winners of this match.
Yes. Sometimes we were the winners of this match. Sometimes we lost, but we were faces, so we got to win more often. With Keith Scott Zimmerman, who was handled by, I want to say it's Butch Rosser, another great prolific writer from that time period. He handled the Black Plague, Ruben Ross. He handled this guy, Keith Scott Zimmerman. Those names might sound familiar. In Action, because I was in Action for a while, which I want to say was Ross's Efed at the time.
Roland. I'm sorry. Yes, Roland. Roland, when you hear this part, I'm very sorry I got it wrong. Well, they're brothers, and they are very similar, so that's not surprising.
Right, but if I had a brother who was very similar to me and people got us confused, I would be upset about it. Roland, I just want to reiterate, I am very, very old. And we had been in a stable in Action with Keith Scott Zimmerman and a guy named Jeff Garvin called Wrestling 101, where we took you to school, right?
Heyo.
But Keith Scott Zimmerman, who is in no way related to Scott Keith or Christopher Robin Zimmerman, were in a tag team called the International Work Rate Connection, or IWC. I loved naming things. And if I could name them dumb, I'd name them as dumb as I could get away with.
Well, we see that, Kevin.
Oh, yes, absolutely. That's one of my favorite things about wrestling. I love wrestling. Wrestling's great, but it's the dumbest goddamn thing. And the dumber it gets, the happier I am.
You love to see it.
You'd love to see it, Chris.
So,
see?
I see what he's doing there. I like it.
Some of these people mention my name. I got to listen to all of them just in case this guy does it too.
Dropping knowledge.
Yeah.
So,
I remember this Kevin guy. He was awesome. Yes, he was. This guy knows what's happening. This guy's smart.
So you're back in the FWO. You've got a bunch of bad names.
Yeah.
What's going on next?
So after that, it was Threeville went. We're the heel stable for 3 to 6 months. We're again at this point in real wrestling and in indie wrestling, you tended to go between existential threats to the organization, right? These guys are here. They're going to ruin things. All right, we've defeated them. Okay, now these guys are here, and we're going to ruin things. Okay, well, we've defeated them. All right, here are different guys. They're also going to ruin things. And we were different guys right then. So we wrestled as Threeville for a little bit. I think I ended up getting my first tag team championship at that point. I think so. I think me and Primetime won the titles. I think Rick was Rick Kronos was the character who was the lead evil guy who was vying for the world title. So we're the secondary characters now, and you vie for the secondary titles, right?
That's what they do.
We're serious threats. We win stuff.
Yes.
Threeville gets vanquished. I couldn't even begin to tell you how. I just don't remember. And the FWO site on the Wayback Machine is a little bit sketchy. And I listened to Pete's interview, which is why I know there's a 2-hour time limit on these things.
Dubbed the Pete rule for a reason.
And it felt very much like he had annotated notes on what happened. I'm like, I was a fake wrestler and we won, I won some stuff and I lost some other stuff. And I'm assuming at the end of it, I lost something, right? Because that's how most of the things that are happening. So Threeville dissolves at some point. I'm trying to think. I started teaming with a character named Danny Colligan. That was the Elitist. He had been the evil commissioner in CWL. At this point, a couple of the CWL guys had merged over because they were good guys that that we could vouch for, that had talked to Ed, who had talked to Travis. So we were a tag team for a little bit. I want to say we'd won the tag team championships. Maybe we did, maybe we didn't. It's all pretend anyways, right? Then that fell apart when I started teaming up with Rick again. I think I turned on Danny to start teaming with Rick, and that's when we became the World Peace Organization. We also got one of my favorite theme songs, which was Walk in the Dark. I think by someone or other. But it's just like, it's really sinister music, right? So we were the World Peace Organization. We had a fun bit where we did the standard heel thing where for a little bit there we kept cheating to keep our titles because we're jackasses and that's what you do, right? And whoever was running the FW at the time was upset by that because you're a bad person and decided that we could no longer have, as punishment for this, where we would lose a non-title match and then square our way out of the title match either by chicanery or just by leaving. We were no longer allowed to have non-title matches for, I think it's like the month of July. You can't have any title matches. Or you can't have a non-title match. And, whoever wins the match by whatever means becomes the champion. So you can't, you have to actually win. Yeah. Right? Like they really threw the hammer down, but they said for the, the month of July, this is the rule for the tag team title. And then we promptly lost the title to a team that was participating in a round robin tournament. So we were like their non-tournament match. Yeah. They beat us. They take the title. And then they go into the round robin tournament with the title.
With the champions, yeah.
But the championship has been decided that whoever wins a match gets the title. So the title changes hand about 3 or 4 times during this tournament before, unsurprisingly, kind of ending back up on our waist. Which we thought was a lot of fun at the time. A couple of the other tag team handlers, and rightly so. We're like, but we were having this tournament to kind of decide who was the next guy to step up and fight you. And suddenly, like 3/4 of the people in the tournament are now former tag team champions. Right? Like, yeah, but it's neat. It's neat that this happened. It's like, from a manner, yes, we acknowledge that to a certain extent, this was an interesting thought experiment. Maybe we would not have done that again if we had a chance not to do it again. So we ended up doing whatever. We ended up losing the titles, and that's when Frenchie comes out and starts making a play for, what? I'm a former FWO champion. I'm a heavyweight champion. I think at that point maybe 3 times over. I'm ready to go for it again. I really ought to be the face of the company. I'm the best. Everyone knows I'm the best. I've got a cool accent. I've got a winning smile. I've got a cool beret. Come on. You want me to be the champion. I want to be, put me in those ranks again. And just about the time that was happening, the FWO had a annual tradition of a show called Countdown. I think originally it was Countdown to Oblivion, and later just Countdown. It was a 3-night series of basically 3 pay-per-views in a row. It was Countdown 3, Countdown 2, Countdown 1. And we've been building up that year that previously a character named Joy. There had been 2 similar characters. One was named Joy, one was named Fallen. And it had been established that Joy had passed away. And Fallen and Joy had actually been, backstage. They were friends. So when Joy had died, probably even murdered, knowing the FWO, he was probably murdered. I don't remember for sure. If someone else says, that's not what happened. That's not what happened. But the way I remember it, he was murdered. And it comes to light that, in fact, when Joy had been murdered, Joy and Fallen had switched places. They were in each other's costumes, but because they were kind of heavily costumed characters with similar bone structure, no one had noticed. So Joy hadn't died, Fallen had died, and now this guy who had formerly been the super happy-go-lucky Joy had been moping around as Fallen and is very upset about how things have happened. And on Countdown 1 of that year, he ends up going on a shooting spree. He kills a couple of characters. I had asked Travis was back in charge at this point. I had asked Travis, listen, at the end of the year, I kind of want to get back in the world heavyweight picture. I don't need to be the champion, but I want to get back in the picture. But I need a couple of months, a little bit of time coming up. If I'm doing the math right, maybe that was around the time I had my first kid. Maybe not. But I'm I just need some time off for me. So can I get injured in Countdown? Because you always do something big at Countdown. I know something's going to happen. Can I be injured during whatever happens at Countdown? And I'll be out for a couple of months, and then I'll come back. And once I come back, I'd like to be in the picture. I don't need to be the champion, but I want to be at least a character who says, I want to be the champion. Let me fight the champion. I lose, that's fine, but I want to do it. He's like, yeah, Kevin, we can do that. That's fine. So during his shooting rampage, Fallen shoots me. I collapse in a room. He sets fire to the building. I want to say it was Madison Square Garden. He sets fire to Madison Square Garden. We established, like, in a role play right after the events of Countdown that Frenchie was found by his friend Rick Kronos, who he'd just been in the World Peace Organization with, and is, like, rescued by him. Like, he's actually dragged out of the building by this guy. So now they're like they were friends before, but now they're like, no, this is, like, you can do no wrong. I was dead, and now I'm not. So you're awesome. Which was another thing I always did with Frenchie, was that he was a terrible, despicable heel. He was all the things you'd want a heel to be, but to his allies, he really was an ally to them. He was a true friend. So when they turned on him, it hurt him, right? Because he would have turned on some schmuck, no problem, right? If I'm just in a random tag team, F this guy, right? But you're my people. We're brothers. We're compatriots. You're my peers. We're good, right? So it hurt more. Well, Rick Kronos is his brother for life now, right? How could he not be? So Frenchie's out for a little bit. He gets surgically repaired. He gets his knee replaced. It's e-wrestling, so what was probably like a 9-month surgery ends up being like 2.5 months. And he's back.
Of course, yeah. Easily healed in e-wrestling. Broken necks are suddenly wrestling the next pay-per-view.
Yeah. I'm a high flyer with a replacement knee. Does that stop me from diving off the top rope with my guillotine leg drop? It does not, sir. That is not a thing that happens. I'm all better. So he comes back that year. I don't even remember what I do most of that year. I'm not going to pretend otherwise, right? It was a lot of stuff. It was fun. It was always fun. That's the best part. It's always fun. But we end up getting towards the end of the year, and Eli Flair, who is Pete's character by Pete's book, was the champion at the time. And I guess he had gone over to Travis and said, hey, listen, Kevin should get another title run, right? Travis was like, sure, that's cool. Cool. So we come up to the next year's countdown, so we're already skipping ahead a year because I don't have any idea what happened in between. And same deal, countdown 3, countdown 2, countdown 1, and they've established that on countdown 3, Eli Flair is defending the title against Brand Frontier, who's this like kind of paladin type character, right? He's not necessarily a good person, but he does the right thing. Like, he's lawful good, but that doesn't mean
he's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Like, he wasn't a bad guy, but that was kind of how his character was.
He's a flawed character who does the right thing.
Yeah. Another really good writer. Couldn't tell you the guy's name off the back of a milk carton, but I remember the character name. Really great character. Right. So Brand Frontier had the first shot, then Frenchie had the second shot, and then on the last night was Rick Kronos, and it was established that these were the next 3 challengers, no matter what happened. So Eli goes in, he fights Brand, he beats Brand. He goes in the next night, he fights Frenchie, and Frenchie wins. Awesome. That's great. I love when I win. That's the best. And then Countdown 1 ends with Frenchie and Rick Kronos going one-on-one for the world title in the main event as we count down to the new year. And Frenchie retains there, which was also really fun. But I got a chance to write with my friend Rick. We got to have a match together, which I don't know that we'd ever had before. Rick was initially a face, but at a different part of the card than I was, so I'm not sure that we'd ever wrestled prior to that. Again, maybe, but I don't have a recollection of it. So we have this big, friendly rivalry match that Frenchie is able to win. But you get to do all the cool spots where, the guy ducks the move because he knows the move, because he's tagged with the guy for 9 months, right? He knows this person. And they end up, Frenchie ends up winning, and they do, the good guy hug of victory, because at this point, Frenchie's a face. And we go on to the new year. I think I lost at the next pay-per-view back to Eli. That was fine, right? Because I got to have that cool moment. And that's all e-wrestling is, right? None of it matters. You just have a bunch of cool moments.
You're exactly right. So not only did you win the belt, you beat Eli Flair, and then you got to face your longtime tag team partner, co-writer. You win there, retain the title, and then come back against Pete, and almost full circle lose the belt back to quote-unquote the good guy. Yeah.
But even at that time, we were both kind of the good guy. It was a weird place for me. I responded on one of the earlier questions of the week. Frenchie was almost always a heel, but even when he was a face, he was the same guy. He was just a dick to heels then, right? still cheated, right? Because he didn't get dumber just because he turned face. It's still the best strategy.
He's just a dickhead to the bad guys and decent to the good guys suddenly.
Right. And he might feign like, oh, whoops, did I do that if he gets caught? Right? Like, shucks, I should have known better. You're right.
Yeah, and then the face shakes the finger at him.
Yeah. So that was that, and I want to say that was the end of, I think that was end of 2004 going into 2005. I don't remember what happened after that, right? The FWO shut down at some point in 2005, and I was just kind of done with e-fetting for a bit.
Until the FWO comes back.
Yeah, it comes back in 2009, and I have a really fun storyline with a character named Braun. I don't remember the handler. Really great guy. He was a new guy to the FWO, and I wanted to be, hey, I just spent all the rest of the time, like a lot of the storylines that I was involved with were, these are guys I really like. These are guys that I'm going to keep doing things with because I like how they write. I understand their characters. I can write their characters. They understand my character. And I just enjoy talking to them. But it's like, hey, here's a new guy. I'm not a new guy. New guy, come play with me. Right? So on the first card back when the FWO returns this, he's kind of a rookie character. His name is Braun. Again, you already understand who this guy is, right? He's a big, beefy, but maybe a little naive babyface. He comes in, and right away in his first match, he beats the former 4-time world champion. Frenchie doesn't love this. He takes Braun under his wing. He's like, look how talented you are and how skilled you are. And with always the little hint of, is Frenchie like really being sincere to this guy, or is he just kind of trying to trick him? Right?
Either he's trying to trick him or use him or something.
Yeah. Like, he might be legit, because the last time we saw him, he was a face, and he would have been nice to them. But he's still French, right?
Can't trust him.
You can't trust them. And you can't have fries named after them.
No. Or toast.
No, absolutely not. You need your freedom toast. So we have us, he takes him under his wing, and we do some fun RPs, and where like he introduces Braun to his trainer, like this is the woman who made me the wrestler I am, and I don't have nearly the natural skills you do. Look how big and strong you are. You're much bigger and stronger than me. Look how terrific you are. Like, I'm fast and I'm sneaky, but you're just built, right? So this is what she did for me. What can she do for you? So it kind of builds them up, and then they have a second match. Like, hey, I'd like a rematch. You beat me. I want a rematch. And it was one of my favorite matches I've ever written, because I do like Frenchie's intro and then Braun's intro, and then like a quick description of, every time Braun tries, starts getting ahead, Frenchie does a little underhanded thing. And then I cut immediately to 15 minutes later, the side, ringside looks like a tornado's run through. The announce desk is no more. The announcers are standing there, and Frenchie's having his arm raised in victory. Man, I wish I could write every match like this. Just skip all the wrestling part and get to the part where I win.
Taking more notes right now.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, this is in 2009. It's 2021. I still have a very clear memory of this. I wrote a lot of matches for the FWO. I wrote Frenchie matches. I was just a match writer. Again, at one point we were doing 2 cards a week plus pay-per-views once a month. I was probably writing 12 to 13 matches each month.
Brian, right? Cut all of that so I can use it for classic wrestling.
And if I'd known I could just get away with, they started wrestling, and then the heel cheated, and then he won.
Matches would have been a lot shorter.
So much shorter. I really can't recommend it anymore. It's fantastic. But even then, it's like, well, what did you do to me? It's like, that's how I wrestle. You've seen me wrestle. You know this is how I wrestle. Like, but we're friends. Like, yes, we are 100% friends, and I value you, and I think you're going to be a great superstar. You're a fantastic wrestler. But I'm the Flying Frenchie. What did you expect?
This is what I do, people.
Yeah. Like, I'm the scorpion on the back of the L. Why'd you sting me? Because I'm a scorpion. What were you expecting? Don't put this on me. You knew better. They ended up having a third match. I'm pretty sure that was a pay-per-view match. Naturally, Braun's the new guy. So Braun ends up winning that. But again, I think we do the same deal where no, I was going to say I think he cheats, but no, he just got a flat-out clean victory. He hits his finisher. He gets the clean 1, 2, 3. They have the handshake of respect at the end. And then I think he has like a snide comment at the very end. It's like, well, I'll have my rematch one day. I was like, who's to say you've deserved it, right? Oh, you, right? So we finished that up. And then I started teaming with the Mike Bair character in the winners of this match tag team. Mike Bair was another fantastic writer. He wrote one of my very favorite role plays I've ever been a part of, where Frenchie and Mike Bair are watching whatever Fast and the Furious movie had come out in 2009. We're at the theater. And like they're just having a conversation. And whenever Frenchie was with him, I think that was in a stable called The Underground that predated me, which is why the name wasn't awful. Whenever he was with them, like he was the goofballiest version of Frenchie. So he's watching this Fast and Furious movie and he's just like enraptured by it, right? And Mike Bair is doing all of his things, and in between dialogue, he just put like the description of what's happening on screen. A car drives by and explodes, and then we talk some more, and then like 2 more cars drive by and explode, and then we talk some more, and like 3 explosions drive by and become cars, right? And it's just
he's just making ridiculous, And
it made me so happy, just so happy, because again, it's fun in the best way, and I'm pretty sure like that was it. I ended up having a match against KSZ, Keith Scott Zimmerman, who had been in part of the International Work Rate Connection, because he had been my mentee in that team, and he had like a blood feud with Mike Bair. So, Frenchie goes ahead and says, hey, I'm going to start wrestling with this guy now because I can do good business with him, and I like the guy, and we can be tag team champions. And you're off doing your own thing. You're like a singles champion now. I think he was probably the internet champion at that point, but he was going to go up the card to be a world champion. Like, you don't need a tag team partner. You're going to be the world champ. I'm getting older. I'm getting beat up. I need some help, right? And I like this guy, so we're going to be tag team partners. What's that wrong with my former friend? I don't think a whole lot came with that. I think they had 1 or 2 matches about it, and then it was fine. And I think that was just what I did until the FWO finally shut down at the end of 2009. There were rumors briefly that it was coming back every once in a while, but nothing ever came of that.
And so the FWO shuts down, and you once again take a break?
Yeah, just I'm done at that point. I mean, what's left to do, right? I've obviously told every pro wrestling story you can tell, and I've done it with people I like. And if I go to any other Fed, it's going to be
starting over.
You're starting over, even if it's like, oh, this one guy is here, or hey, this guy read your stuff, because that was the weirdest thing to me. That like I understood why I read it. I didn't understand why anyone else read it. But like legitimately, there are people who weren't involved in the Fed who, the show would launch, they check on the show, right? Like that's wild to me. Because I promise you, I have done that no time.
0 times, yes.
Never happened. 0. As many times as I have bought someone Disney swag, I have read someone else's Efed. It has never happened. Right? And I'm sure they're great. And I'm sure people listening to this are like, well, what a schmuck this guy is. My stuff's the best thing that's ever written. And they're probably right. I don't know.
To them, yes.
Right. Hell, maybe even subjectively. Right? Or objectively. I got it wrong. Brian, edit that out. Maybe even objectively they're right. Right? Someone out there did the best writing. Right? Stands to reason. Someone's the best at it. Odds that it's me are pretty low. So if someone else did it, that makes sense to me. And I missed out on that, right? I missed out on this, this war and peace of e-wrestling, which is a shame for me, but it's still out there. Right? But I don't want to join some other Fed and you don't get the Frenchie. That's not what the Frenchie is. Like, oh, but he does this. Like, that's kind of what he is. But that's not the sum of him.
You just don't know.
Whereas in the FWO, he spanned from 98 to 2009 with some gaps, but he had a full telling of his story. And anything else is like, well, what if we just do this again? Like, but I did that already, right? But these people don't know that. It's like, well, that's true, but I know that. That doesn't sound like fun, right? So I was just kind of done.
All right, so we covered the FWO, we covered the return of the FWO, and we even covered, was it CWO?
Yes, sir.
And so that brings us to today. You found somehow, some way, the Efed podcast.
Yes.
And go ahead.
Oh, I'm sorry. This is the thing with radio is I'm terrified of stepping all over you. Yeah, I think it was Ross. I think that's why I said Ross earlier when I meant Roland. Was I think Ross had mentioned me in his interview, and so it said, "Oh, on the you had said on your Discord, oh, someone should find Kevin." And Linz and Pete are both like, "I know him on Facebook," and Pete got to me first. I'm like, "Hey, there's a podcast. They talked about you, about me, yoink." And there I am here.
And so you find the podcast. Really yeah, you join the Discord, and it's something like that where I say, "Hey, we should find Kevin," and someone says, "Okay, I got him." And then it's almost like I heard your name so many times before I started talking to you, and then you were fun in conversation, and everything worked out. And then I opened my own Efed.
That's classic-wrestling.com.
Classic-wrestling.com. Your favorite 80s studio style wrestling, where it's bi-weekly, one role play, 750 words. And Kevin, not only did you join Classic when we got kicked off, but you are the winner and first world heavyweight champion, or real world champion.
The real world champion, sir. I'm glad you corrected it, because you need to be right about that. You got to put some respect on the name.
It's what sets us apart from others. We have the real world's champion here in classic-wrestling.com.
The others are all imaginary, whereas mine is actually sitting on my bed right now. It's a real shame I didn't turn the camera on. You put a lot of work into this thing. I mean, this is a good solid 60 pounds. All right, it is gorgeous.
You've heard of 10 pounds of gold.
Yeah, this is amazing. And honestly, the thing I'm least looking forward to is eventually I'm going to lose. And I don't like that.
You got to pay the shipping.
Yeah, the shipping. That's going to be brutal. Right? And the insurance on it? Oh, come on.
Mm-hmm.
But it was a really nice sentiment. And I don't want to make it sound like I'm ungrateful for the gift. Okay? You're a good person, and it was a great idea. And when I have to ship it off to the next guy, that just it'll be my privilege and my honor.
There you go. No, but yes, we have enjoyed you in the micro-fed. You haven't role-played or written really wrestling since 2009, and you joined back in 2021. How does it feel to be back in e-wrestling?
A lot of fun and a little weird. It just is. Basically, you won me over with here. Again, I say this with love, but the absolute dumbest version of wrestling.
Yes.
Hey, remember the 80s where you're a witch doctor and a prison guard? I want to do that. It's like, yes, sign me up. That sounds perfect. Wait, I don't have to write any matches, do I? No? Do I have to write any role plays? Very short ones. Okay. Yeah, this sounds great. This sounds awesome. It's been super easy to read everyone. I read everyone's stuff. I read the whole show. Sometimes I'm a little nitpicky with it. But I'm nitpicky with it because I care.
Because it's love, yes.
It's love. Again, I'm emotionally invested in it, which is why, without getting too far behind the curtain, we were talking this past week or so about a recent angle that I was a little bit flustered with. Not a lot flustered. Like, here's one thing in this that just kind of rubbed me the wrong way.
Yeah.
Right? It wasn't done poorly. It just, to me, this is the bit that, right, it's a hangnail. Nothing wrong with it, but you should, it's not going to kill you, but it's there. And I had a little back and forth with the handler who written it. It's like, and at first I think it's because it's written text that it sounds like, oh, you're a big jerk face who doesn't know what they're doing. And really, man, I loved all of this. This is great. That one tiny minuscule part didn't connect with me the way everything else did. But the reason I care about that one tiny minuscule part is because everything else resonates.
Yes.
Right? There have been, over the years, you read someone's stuff, and I don't need to read anything else this guy writes, right? He had sex with Cindy Crawford in his mansion, great. I don't ever need to read a second thing that guy writes.
I know what it's going to be, yes.
Yeah, there's going to be no surprise, right? But just, I love the guys in the Fed. It's a really nice atmosphere. I don't want to say it's a low level of commitment because that makes it sound like you're not a priority, right? That's not what I mean. But I'm a married guy with 2 teenagers. I got stuff going on, man.
Same.
I can't.
Yeah.
I can't. It's not like when I was in college and it's I've got 12 hours of free time every day. That is not what this is.
Can you imagine?
Oh, goodness. Just, I could have been so good at so many things that I applied myself at all.
Instead, I do fantasy wrestling. Yes.
Yes. Oh my goodness.
Yeah, but no, Classic's been a blast. Like you said, it is kind of low commitment. It's, bi-weekly shows, 750 word RPs. So it's kind of easy to keep up with. And we do appreciate the fact that, Kevin, you are keeping up with the Fed. You're reading every role play. You're actually reviewing and giving quick feedback for every role play too, which is a blast.
Yeah, and that's just important to me because as someone who writes, even if it's been a while, like you would get people back in the day, people going, "Oh, I love that role play," or "I love that segment." And it's like, yeah, but that doesn't help me, right? And part of it is, at least my feedback, some of it's kind of sold as like, I really like this character. I like what you did here. I'm always a little hesitant to say something like, "Oh, when you said this, I think this might have been, well, you don't want to hear how I would have written it."
No, because you're not the author. Yes.
Yeah, you're writing it. But if sometimes it's like, "Oh, I noticed that you're using this, and I couldn't help that was on purpose. Is it something I'm picking up on? Is it something I catch?" But mostly, it's saying this was a lot of fun, and thank you for giving me this.
Yes.
Right? Much like the 60-pound title, you have given me a present that I do not deserve.
You're acknowledging that you're reading somebody else's stuff, and for most people, that is friendship material.
and that it brought me joy, right? It's so easy. How often do you see something on the internet and it makes you happy, right? Everything's designed for you to go, "I can't believe this schmuck is such a bastard." That every time you read any news article about anything, about
and a lot of e-wrestling,
Hollywood, about e-wrestling, it's all designed to make you have one emotional reaction, and that emotional reaction is hatred and rage.
Yes, and negativity.
Yeah, that's it. Because they know that if you're upset, you're going to click on it so you can be more upset. And instead, it's like, here's a poop read. Here's something that you can spend 2.5 minutes and go, "This guy's a bus."
Yes.
He's not a bus driver. He's not a prison guard. He's not a mechanic. He's a bus.
The man thinks he's a bus. Yes.
Yeah, and no one else is saying, "You're not a bus. You're a guy." It's like, listen, you might be a bus, but I'm going to kick your ass. Right? I'm going to pull you up by your whole chassis.
I'm going to pull you over and pop your tire.
Yeah. I'm going to give you a lube job like you've never had before, except you probably want to be, that's a little innuendo. You want to be a little careful about that.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But the rich guy's a rich guy, and the bus is a bus, and the colossal, Mad Max warlord is a post-apocalyptic warlord. And the minister doesn't come out there and go, "It's a sin to pretend to be a warlord." He goes, "Man, you're a very scary warlord, but with my ministry, I'm going to beat you." And I love it, because why wouldn't you love it?
Everyone buys in, and that's the idea that we had, and it's an absolute blast, man. I'm having a great time, and you've been doing well, obviously undefeated, holding the championship. How does that feel after such a long break?
That feels nuts because, and I know I've mentioned this to you before, but in the last hour and 40 minutes of me telling you how awesome I am, and I've talked about sim feds and I talked about angle feds, you ain't heard jack about roleplay feds because I've never done a roleplay fed, right? It's just not a thing I've done. So I expected, they're like, "Oh, I'm pretty good at writing. I'm a decent creative writer, but this is a new character. He's all business Alex Bruder, who I think I've described to other people as a mix of maybe Arn Anderson, Dean Malenko, and Jake the Snake Roberts. Right. Just kind of lives in that world where back in the 80s, some guys are big, larger-than-life characters. Again, you're a voodoo doctor, you're a cannibal, you're a prison guard, you're a model, right? But then you had guys like Arn Anderson. It's like, "Well, what are you? I'm a professional wrestler. I'm going to beat on you because I'm a professional wrestler. I'm going to do it professionally. But I'm going to wrestle you because that's what I do. That's what I get paid to do, and I get paid more money if I beat you.
Yes.
So I'm going to try and beat you because I like money, and I don't like not having money. So that was kind of, that character was just, he's a wrestler, and if he were any good at anything else, he'd be doing that. He's not doing this because he loves wrestling. Who loves getting punched in the mouth? No one loves being punched in the mouth. But he can do it, right? He doesn't love it, but he can do it. And he's good enough that he can do it with the best of them. And if he has a good streak, suddenly he's your real world champion, and he's going to make more money than you because he's in the main events and he's wrestling for the world title. And even if he loses the real world championship, he's still going to make a ton of money off of that match. Like right now, he's at his peak. It's all upside now. The guy who wins the first match doesn't make as much money he's going to make losing the last match.
That's right.
Right? Because it's all real. Right? There is no kayfabe. There is no, well, at his home life, Alex Bruder has a toaster and he loves making macrame and, sometimes he'll go for bike rides so that he can look at bunnies. Right?
None of that. No.
No. If Alex Bruder is looking at a bunny, it's because he thinks that somehow looking at this bunny is going to make it easier for him to beat you next week. He's not sure how. But if he figures it out, then that's what it's going to do. Right? I noticed that he hops around like you hop around. So I'm looking to see what beats him. And that's what I'm going to do to beat you. So next week I'm coming in with some wings and I'm going to pick you up in my talons. Right?
And Alex Bruder's been an absolute blast. The promos are gutting. It's very cerebral in the way you approach the character. So the judges, I know, have been big fans. And even in the world title match, when it came down to it, your promo was very champion-like.
Yeah, I really liked a lot. First off, it's weird competing in creative writing. Like, that's weird. Right?
Yeah, 100%. And in Classic, we don't have a syllabus or something to follow. It's literally, hey, which of the judges liked which one more?
Yeah. So it's weird, but enjoyable. All right. And again, I've won, so that makes it better. But it was just fun to get in the mindset of a guy going, I have to beat you because it's better than not beating you.
It's literally my job to beat you. Yeah.
I am getting paid to beat you. And I can lose every once in a while. We all lose every once in a while. He hasn't given this promo yet. He will eventually. But you lose too many times, and suddenly they stop paying you to try and beat other people because they're just not looking. They don't expect that to happen anymore. Right? Like, I got to keep a pretty good running average here. So, again, he's not as fleshed out, and it's not necessarily fair to me to compare the two characters. Because one character, I was kind of in his skin for 11 years with some downtime, 12 years, something like that, right? From 98 to 2009 with some gaps. And this is a character when we go live, June?
Yeah, June. So 3 months. Yeah,
2-3 months. I love him, but I don't quite think I've got the voice down right? Not to besmirch anything. I think it's good. I'm just not there yet with it. So I'm kind of looking forward to being there with it. So that's that.
And we're excited to see you get there. And in the meantime, you've got some tough competition. I know.
Oh, goodness, yes.
I know we've got some good ideas for you and where we're going to go with the title, but we'll get there. And in the meantime, if you guys want a chance to come up against Kev as all business, check out classic-wrestling.com. There he is. Okay. Well, very good, Kev. That's going to bring us to our questions from the crowd. Are you ready for your peers to ask the questions?
I am, in fact, and I'm going to see if I can't get it done in 16 minutes.
All right. Well, let's not, rapid fire, but we're not going to rush too much. Cat Passidy's up first. Our good friend Joe. Describe what the 15 minutes a day that Alex Bruder allows him to be only a little business is like. What does he do with his free time?
And I don't want to undermine the question. That seems unfair, but Alex Bruder, he's all business all the time. Like, even the things you think aren't business, like, he's sleeping. And you go, well, he's not all business while he's sleeping, but he's recuperating. He's recovering. And in his sleep, he is plotting against you.
And he knows that he needs X number of hours of sleep. So it is business-like.
Yeah, his body is a machine, and he has to do the maintenance on it, just like Double Decker does. When he's in the men's room, you might think, well, certainly he's not all business when he's in the men's room. But no, these are, waste products within him that are poisoning him slowly that he has to remove so he's in the best possible condition so that he can beat you when he needs to. It's all business all the time. Unfortunately, there just is no joy in his life. He does not get the benefit of reading a Double Decker roleplay, right? He doesn't get that happiness. He doesn't see someone punch a cow. He doesn't get that.
No.
He's all business all the time.
Even in the bathroom, he's quick, efficient, and all business.
Yes.
Amazing.
3 squares of toilet paper tops.
Well, up next is the Shadow Pope. It's Pete from back in the day and the founder of the Pete Rule, hashtag Buy Pete's book, One Chance, Legend of Valerian's Garden, over on Amazon. The Frenchie's record against Black Quicksilver was that planned from the start, or was it like Undertaker's streak, a happy accident for a while, and you decided to make it a thing?
So Black Quicksilver was a FWO character. He was more of a comedy character. And again, early in the FWO, they were sim results. So the first couple of times me and that character met off, the other guy won because that's what he did, right? That's what the results were. Later, as it became more of an angled thing, we did end up, I made sure that I kept losing to him because he's a character who had my number, right? He was the guy who was going to beat me. So eventually it did become this is on purpose. It started off as this is the way the dice came. And then it became more of but he always beats me. Why should this be any different, right? In fact, that led to one of my happiest moments was I posted a news post, because like in any Efed, you have the role plays that are Frenchie's going and doing this thing. And sometimes it's, here's the news post. He's got an interview with someone. So it's like a quick 5-paragraph news post on, the Flying Frenchie and Black Quicksilver are fighting this week. And Frenchie's whatever champion he was at the time, how do you think you're going to fare against Black Quicksilver, considering he's always beating you? Like, and he had, right? Like that's not the announcer taking the piss out of him. Like that's an accurate statement of reality, almost. Because Frenchie's like, that is not true. He has not always beaten me. One of those matches was a draw. And
technicalities, you love it.
Yeah. Rick, the handler Rick Cronus, his name is also Rick, reported to me later that day that he was reading that while drinking his coffee, and he snorted some out upon reading that line. Right. One of those was a draw, and he went, and I have never been so happy to violently injure one of my friends. What am I going to get, an Oscar? Come on, this is the best this is going to be.
That's all you want. If you can pop a few people, you've done your job as a writer.
Yeah, basically, I'm writing to amuse myself. If other people also find it funny, that's a bonus.
Yes. And the best compliment you can get.
Oh, absolutely, yes.
Rossi Orton's up next. It is Ross. What's your fondest Flying Frenchie moment in the FWO?
Let's see. I have to say it was probably the Ultraviolet feud. Just the end of the Ultraviolet feud where, he loses in the ring. He starts to unmask himself. I left that out of the story. He starts to unmask himself, and the valet, Violet, stops him, comes in the ring, and kind of like gently caresses his cheek, and you're like, oh, maybe this is going a different way, and then smacks him and then rips the mask off of him. I was like, oh, this is perfect. This is everything I want wrestling to be, right? He's a horrible, terrible person, and he got his comeuppance. And he had tried toying with someone's heart, and in the end, that backfired on him, and now he's humiliated in the worst way. And that was just – it was so much fun writing with those people.
Thank you. Thank you for being a good bad guy. A lot of people don't like to lose at the end, and I just – it's our job as a bad guy. We should lose, and in glorious fashion.
Yeah, and it shouldn't be you got the roll-up finish – right, it shouldn't be
drop me on my head 4 times and pin me.
Yeah, right. Or my devious techniques have backfired against me, or you've used them against me.
Yes.
Or this is the time that the referee actually, doesn't have glaucoma, so he totally saw me do that thing. Right. Or my friends got kicked out from ringside.
Or imagine this: your character actually submits.
Yeah. I can't take it anymore. Have to go. You're better than me. You're better than me. Fine. You're better than me. Let me get out of here. I'm done.
Yes.
Is that what you want? Fine. You're good. I'm going away now.
I love to see another heel who likes to lose.
Just like again, you have to win leading up to it, because otherwise,
because it makes the loss at the end so much sweeter.
But yeah, at the end of the story, it is not your story. It's their story. You're facilitating their story, right?
Warren's up next. What FWO let me try that again. What FWO moment would you most hope to forget?
That's almost an easy one because I've forgotten so much of it. right? The real mediocre ones they're gone, right?
Only the really good and the really bad stick.
Yeah, the really good and really bad. I think for Frenchie, the one thing that I wish I could, that's not quite the question he asked, because I don't regret any of it, right? But if I could undo something, we'd run an angle where Frenchie and the Mad Trucker had been mind swapped, because wrestling, right? So suddenly Frenchie thinks oh no, that wasn't the Mad Trucker. It was the Mad Trucker. I'm sorry. For a second I thought it was someone else. Never mind. Where they were mind swapped. And initially it was going to be, Frenchie thinks he's the Mad Trucker, and now I'm playing with that cast of characters. And the Mad Trucker thinks he's Frenchie, and he's playing with my cast of characters. And somehow it very quickly became the Mad Trucker and his cast of characters became, like, they all turned French. And my cast of characters all became dumb rednecks. And because this is really kind of early into the whole angling idea of it, like, we thought, this would be a fun idea for 3 or 4 shows. And it ended up running for about a month and a half.
And you didn't want anything to do with it by the end.
Yeah, and everyone else is kind of tied up to it on force. It's like, but I don't want to tell this story. It's like, I thought I did, but it just ended up not being the way we wanted it to go.
Sure.
But that was our fault. We did that to us, right? So probably that one. If not that, then the primetime players, I'd like to forget them. But probably that one.
So always missing something. It's Meg. Who would win, Alex Bruder or the Frenchie? Good question.
I think there are a couple different answers to that. Clearly, if we're in a roleplay fed, Alex Bruder, he's undefeated.
Yes.
The Flying Frenchie has never won in a roleplay fed. Clearly, in a roleplay fed, it's Alex Bruder. In an angle fed, probably Frenchie. Again, Alex Bruder completely winless in angle feds. So Frenchie's got a huge upper hand there. And also, I get to choose, and he's been my guy longer, so you probably get it. Except, we're pushing Alex.
Unless it's for the belt.
Yeah, unless it's for the belt, and he's got to lose. Are we taking them both at their height, right? Because right now, Alex Bruder's much younger, right? And he's never been shot in the leg. So that seems like a pretty big advantage. But, ultimately, I think it just, whatever the story needs to be for that one. Probably Alex, just because he needs the build, but...
And Alex hasn't been in any terribly named tag teams either.
No, he has not had that opportunity. Trust me, if I get enough time, it's going to happen.
All buses, Alex Bruder. I like it. Up next is Seth is Burns. It's Seth. Can I also have a big megawatt smile like the Frenchie?
He absolutely can. And what Seth's referencing is that when Frenchie was really happy, when he was very pleased with himself, and again, he's an arrogant jackass. He was frequently very pleased with himself. He didn't just smile. He had a megawatt beam, right? The Frenchie, when he was happy, the Frenchie beamed, and he squared his array. Like, there were just certain ticks that crept into my writing, and one of them was that Frenchie, when he's very happy, is not a smiler. He beams, right? He is so pleased with himself. And by the way, he's in an arena with 15,000 other people. The guy up front, the guy in the back, the last row needs to see he's just as happy as the guy in the front row seats, right? So just big old cheesy beam. And yes, Seth, you can 100% have a big megawatt smile. That's directly from me. I have authorized it. Do you need it in writing or hit me up, man?
That reminds me of the DDP smile. Do you remember that angle?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So good. Up next, the Shadow Pope. It's Pete again. A bunch of FWO guys jumped to the CWO when it opened. Since I didn't know what a FWO was until after CWO was already running, was there some kind of backstage drama that caused people to leave? Or was it a cooperative thing for Ed to get some known names on his show to help get things going? Along with the folks like me who were completely new to the concept of an angle fit.
I think it seemed like there were a bunch of FWO guys coming over primarily because Ed had so many guys. Like, he probably had 6 or 7 characters all by himself that all went from the FWO to his fit, the CWL. Aside from that, I think it was him, it was me, and I did have a little bit of issues, but that was my own drama, right? That wasn't someone pushed me out. I was kind of getting tired and kind of just in my own head and a little upset about it. It was no one else's thing. It was just me. And then Tim and Brian was the Mad Trucker. I think it was just those 4 handlers that came over. I did double check the roster, I think yesterday or the day before, just to make sure I wasn't lying about this. But I think it just felt like there were a lot of FWO guys, but realistically, it's just 4 handlers.
Well, and then Travis too, right?
Yeah, but he helped design and he helped do the website, but he didn't participate, right?
I got you. Okay.
Yeah. And not to say that the poser work and the web design part, those are pretty important parts of it.
Shout out to Solex.
yes, absolutely. But in his Fed, he was doing some writing for here's the background story for the next 2 months is this thing's happening, and he's the one writing that. You probably have a sense of that as well.
Yeah.
In CWL, he didn't do any of that. He didn't have to.
Right. Well, Brock has something to say up next. Actually, he has quite a few. So you ready for some rapid fire questions?
I am. I'll see if I can answer them a little quicker than the other ones.
What's one story you wish you could have told in the FWO?
I'm not sure there was anything that I kind of left writing. I was there for a good long while.
You felt done at the end.
Yeah, I'd done the world title runs, I'd done the comedy runs, I'd done the On the Mentor runs, I'd done the You're My Peer runs. I told most of the stories you were going to tell. Oh, at one point I did the masked wrestler. He was already a masked wrestler, but at some point he came back and started crucifying people. And no, I'm not making any of this up. This was 1999, right? This is what you did. And he was the mysterious masked wrestler, D, which is a different masked wrestler than the Flying Frenchie.
Clearly.
I had done a bunch of stuff. There wasn't a whole lot outside of, I never really got a chance to work with this guy, but I worked with most people for at least a little bit, right?
So explain Ultraviolet to the world.
So Ultraviolet was, again, one of my very favorite characters. And like all good baby faces, a dunce, right? He was just the dumbest man who'd ever walked the face of God's green earth. But he was lovable. So he was a good wrestler. It was similar to me. He started as a cruiserweight. He was a tag team wrestler. He was eventually a world champion. He found love. He got married, right? He was this great character, but he was dumb as a post. At one point in a battle royal, I think his manager had tried handcuffing him to the bottom rope so that he would win, right? You've seen this spot in a battle royal.
Of course.
But he's both an idiot and a good guy, so he spends half the match trying to get out of the handcuffs. Right? Because he shouldn't be handcuffed.
He should be fighting.
Right. Even if he's not thinking, oh, you have cheated on my behalf. It's oh no, this terrible mistake has happened and I have to correct it. Right? He had a role play series called Cooking with Ultraviolet, where he would make something and fit that in whatever he was making would fit into, basically his role play against the character he was fighting. And it always resulted in the kitchen being, damaged in some way. And then the next time you had a Cooking with Ultraviolet, it's if the cabinets had fallen down the last episode, the cabinets are still on the ground, right? If the wallpaper had caught fire, there are scorch marks on the wall. He had better continuity within just his one role play series than I see in lots of actual media. Just the best kind of dumb babyface. He's just awesome.
He's just over the top babyface.
Yeah, and the entire time he never had a turn to the dark side. He was in a tag team with a guy named Scotty Cool. He was Scott Collins. Together they were ultra cool.
Nice.
His tag team partner did become evil for a while, but he never did because that character couldn't. Right? He wouldn't.
He resisted.
Right? It wasn't even resistance. He was immune to it. Right? It was you run a magnet over non-ferrous material. It's not resisting the magnet. That was unintentional.
Oh, I like that. Oh, Kev. That was just for me, buddy. I appreciate that very much.
Right. It wasn't resisting. It just wasn't reactive. Right.
Beautiful. Extra points for the magnet references. All right, moving on. Why was Eric Kelly's handler such a dick? Also from Brock.
I don't know. I never saw that side of him. Right. I heard from other people that, especially because we had a fan board. Can you imagine that? We had our board, but we also had a fan board, so people who weren't on our website could talk to us. And they did. Like, I don't get it, but they did. And my understanding is that he could be a little rough to people on the fan board or people who would hit him up on AIM and say, hey, I really like you in the FWO and blah, blah, blah. And he had pitched the phrase, say hello to Block. When someone was annoying him and he didn't want to talk to him anymore, he would just say hello to Block, and he'd block him on AIM, right? And then his character started saying that, but his character had a cinder block. So he would hit them with the cinder block, and that would say hello to Block and hit him with the cinder block, right? And to the opposite of Brock's question is, I had mentioned in college, someone had at one of the frat houses, someone had taken a cinder block and thrown it at his buddy in the front yard. Some drinking had been involved.
Clearly,
the guy who caught the cinder block is the last thing he caught, right? Because you got hit in the head with a cinder block. He was done, right? And I told that story backstage one day. I'm like, hey, I'm only mentioning this because this is your catchphrase, and it's just a little bit of synchronicity. It's like, oh man, that sounds terrible. I'm going to stop saying that. Or I'm going to stop hitting people with a cinder block, right? I'm going to stop doing that specific thing in character. I was like, oh, I wasn't trying to get you to do that. I just, here's a thing that happened in real life that's similar to what you do with your character. It's like, no, that makes me feel bad as a person, so I'm going to stop doing that. It's like, oh, okay.
So there you go, opposite of a dick.
Yeah, I'm sorry, man.
So who are your 5 favorite FWO characters?
Probably Ultraviolet, Boston Strangler, Mike Bear, Rick Kronos. God, I love that guy. He's like a guy I still talk to with some regularity in real life, and we haven't done anything in e-wrestling for 12 years, right? And number 5 could be a dozen different guys, right? There are just so many. You
have your close group of people, and then you have people you also enjoyed reading.
Yeah, I'll toss Scott Slugger in there. I don't think he's ever going to listen to this, so I'm not like he's going to be like, oh man, he's thinking about me, right? But he was consistent. He had the handler had 3 different characters, and they were all good characters, and they were all different characters, right? But you could have said, well, what about this guy? And you're right. I forgot him. He was my number 5. What about this guy? No, you're right about him. He was number 5.
He was number 5. Yeah.
But there was just a lot of quality people. I didn't even include Eli. I love Eli Flair. That's a great character. I love Ivy even more. But, that's a great character. And Pete's a great writer. But there are just so many great characters and so many great writers, right? And again, you remember the ones you liked, and you remember those ones. And, you don't remember the guys that you had 3 matches with. Was this guy really on the roster? Okay. Yeah, you feuded with him. No. You sure? It's I got a record. All right.
Well, speaking of your record, what was it like winning your first RP title?
That was wild. I was legitimately holding my breath as the live results were coming because I wanted to win, right? You want to win, but
and in this case, it was new to you because you're so used to knowing the angle or it being a simulation thing where you have an idea of what's coming or what makes the most sense.
Yeah, and the simulation was maybe the first 2.5 years I did e-wrestling, right? Yeah. After that, it was all angle. So I was like, what's going to happen? What's going to happen? Oh, he's going to break my hold? Hold on, he didn't break my hold. He passed out. Right? And it's exciting, right? And it was cool because it's a new experience for me, and it's, again, vindication's the wrong word, but we don't get a lot of feedback. No one gets enough feedback, right?
Yeah. And even my feedback is cheap.
Yeah, but it's a little rough saying, I wrote 750 words. Give me 2,000 words on what my thing was good.
Exactly.
And then do that for the other 16 people who were wrestling.
Yeah.
Right? That's not realistic. So to basically go, hey, someone's reading this and they enjoy it, right? This made someone else smile. Someone else read this and go, oh man, this is fun. I like this. That's just a cool feeling.
And yeah, you're vindicated is the right word because not only are you, winning a match, but you have multiple judges in Classic where, hey, they voted for me.
Yeah. But again, because I'm new to roleplay feds and because I like this roster and I like these characters and these handlers so much, I said this backstage before, but I'm not sure I've ever, outside of matches where one guy didn't show up, right? Where one guy just no-showed. I've never once seen one where it's this guy is just heads and tails better. They're all coin flips, right? It's like, which one moves the role plays this week?
Man, 750 words really limits what you can do. But I don't know what the word is, flabbergasted by what people have been able to fit into 750 words, how they've been able to get their character over, because that's what Classic is. It's more about the gimmick and developing the gimmick than it is about straight promo action.
Yeah. Yeah, you've heard me gush about Double Decker like 3 or 4 times already in this role play. Or in this
interview. Yeah.
And none of that is a joke, right?
None of that is I think he's won one match because...
I think he's won one match.
Yeah.
I think he's probably role played 3 times. Right out of 7 shows. That's 8, I guess 8 shows now. I think is he on the next one? I think he's scheduled for the next one.
He's scheduled for this upcoming show, yep.
I'm really hoping he makes it because I love that character. I love his writing. But it's such a weird gimmick. And he completely, in the first 200 words of the first role play, and you're like, no, I get this. I 100% get this. Not only do I get this, I wish I got more of this. I wish that for him, you raised the cap. I said, listen, I think it's Murray, right?
Yeah, it's Murray. Yep.
Murray, you get 1,200 words. Everyone else gets 750. You get 1,200. And you have a minimum of 1,000. You have to hit 1,000. You can't go over 1,200. Also, I'm booking you every week. Even on weeks we don't have shows. Like, you're on week 1 and week 1A.
Man, he is all in on this gimmick.
Yeah, I love it. And he does such a good job. And whenever I see there's a new one posted, which unfortunately it's only been a handful of times, it's legitimately a highlight of my day. It makes me happy before I even read it, right?
That's amazing.
Like, I'm happy after I read it because it's done so well. But just knowing it's there, it's like Christmas morning. I see a box with my name on it. Is it a Wii? It could be a Wii. Is it some socks? It might be some socks. But I know it's a present. I know it's for me.
And I'm excited. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's great. Murr's done great work with him. He's having fun, and he doesn't understand why everyone isn't a transport-based gimmick.
I don't either. Like, I've been doing this since 98, and that never once occurred to me. It's like...
And I noticed his personal Twitter has a lot more tugboat references lately, so that's a little rib for us boys here.
I could have been a kayak. There was nothing stopping me from being a kayak. I just did not have the vision to do it.
No.
And he did. And as much as winning made me feel vindicated, this has brought me back low again. But I think I'm a creative person. I think I'm a clever person. I think I'm an amusing person. And never once to me said, man, if only I could be a hot air balloon. There was nothing stopping me.
And his personality about it's great. He's like, I don't care if I ever win a fucking match as long as I have fun writing the bus.
Oh, I hope he is, because I'm having a ton of fun reading it.
Amazing.
I hope that every time he writes it, it makes him happy. And he's not like, oh, Jesus, I got to come up with another bus pun. Oh, God, what did I get myself into? I hope he's entirely the other way. It's like, oh, man, no, this is too dumb. I can't write this. Okay, this time I'll write it. Like, oh, please do more of that.
I'm hoping he names the next RP Mind the Gap. So there you go. Kev, how do you feel when people remember the things you wrote or did 20 years ago?
Yeah, that is just another strange feeling, right? Because again, I understand if you talk to Tim, the guy who did Ultraviolet, and say, hey, do you remember Kevin? He did the Flying French. Like, oh yeah, we did that whole thing. It was fun. Like that, I kind of get, right? We worked together for a little while. I met him in person. He's one of the handful of people I've actually met from Efeds. But for someone to say, hey, when I was in high school, I was really into reading the FWO. It's like, oh, did you apply? Oh, I never thought to apply. You weren't in it. No, I wasn't in it. Did you have friends who were in it? It's like, no. How do you find this? Because again, there are hundreds, if not thousands of EFEDs.
And to you, you're just in an EFED.
Yeah.
It's no bigger or smaller than the next one. It's just an EFED.
No. And we had a sense that a lot of people liked it, and we knew that other people kind of emulated the design layout, and kind of. I think the FWO may have been, if it wasn't the first, it was one of the first with posers, and that was kind of the next natural extension. Hey, can we make characters that look like the people we see on TV? Right.
Yeah, right.
Like it wasn't them saying, "Hey, I'm a bus." Right. It wasn't a wild thought. It was kind of the natural progression, the same way that these creator wrestler feds are now, or the video feds, where everyone's always got a camera on them. right? You couldn't have done a video fed in 1998. You didn't have a camera on you. You didn't have a way to upload it to your computer. And they didn't have the download speed to ever watch it.
I was just going to say, can you imagine how long it would take to download a video back in the day? I mean, I would download, what are they, Titantrons for different wrestlers, and it would take me hours for a 3-minute video.
Yeah, I remember the first time I got a chance to play online at my, I was at the college when my brother was there, and he's like, here, I'm in class, go play on this computer. I'm like, yes, sir. And I remember waiting for like ECW pictures to download, and you had like the scan line by line.
The top is done, but I'm almost at the bottom.
Yeah. Hold on, I can see someone's face, and I'm pretty sure that's a turnbuckle. Ooh. And by the way, when it was finished, it was not exactly high fidelity, right? There was still a certain amount of, well, if I squint and turn my head at an angle, that must be Sandman.
Is that Francine's boob, or is someone about to get DDT'd?
Yeah. Yeah, I was, 17, 18. You know which one I thought it was.
It was a boob, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, very good. So, if in the FWO, it always felt like there was a weight to keep exceeding. Hold on. In the FWO, it always felt like there was a weight to keep exceeding previous generations or writers. What era did you enjoy to write in the most?
I think the earliest one prior to leaving the CWL was probably the one that I had the most. Like, that was the one I keep going back to whenever I have the memories of it.
The end of your first run.
Yeah, the end of my first run, even the whole first run, basically from the beginning of the French Foundation to leaving, right? Again, because the French Foundation had split up. And the guy that I thought was my peer said, no, you're a jerk face, and I hate you. And I'm going to end your career. Only later to, 6 months later, you'll come in as part of my next evil team. That wasn't planned. But I had so much fun, like the 2009 run, working with Mike Baer and the winners of this match. It was just a lot of fun because it didn't matter. Or working with the guy who handled Braun. It's like, hey, my character already works here, right? People who are following this Fed know my character. They get my character. They like my character. They think he's important, right? Within the limits of this Fed, they think he's important. Your character's new. Let's do something so that your character is an important character. And the easiest way to do that is, hey, look, you beat me. And then we made you better. And then I beat you. And then we made you better still. And then you beat me. Like, what else do you want? Like that. It was so little pressure. It was just fun and having fun and talking to people. So I think the one I think most fondly of was probably the first run. But the one where I was just having fun and not worrying about anything else was the last one.
And finally, from Brock, what era did you enjoy reading the stories the most? Let's say others' stories.
I'd say probably the earlier time period, if only by default that because it was earlier in my college career, I had so much more free time that every time you saw a new post went up, you were excited to open it up and read it. And, by some of the later ones, the writing had gotten better. The characters had gotten fuller. But you also went from, I've got, 800 words of something to say about this to, here are the first 3 chapters of my novel. And they're very good. They're very good. But you're looking at it going, I got 20 minutes. I'm not going to finish this in 20 minutes.
Right.
And there's no page break. I'm not going to put, I'm not going to put a bookmark here and go, paragraph 18 is where I left off. Right. And it's so easy once you stop engaging with it for a little bit, even to just be done engaging with it. Right. It's like, oh, I didn't read this guy's last RP, so I don't really need to read this one because I'm going to miss something. Right.
Unless you're engaged in everything, it's hard to catch it all.
Yeah, and it's hard to catch back up. It's basically it's the way I stopped watching WWE was, I don't like this character, I'm going to fast forward through it. I don't like this one, I'm going to fast forward. I don't like this thing, I'm going to fast forward.
Before you know it, you missed the whole show.
Yeah, it's a 3-hour show. I watched 15 minutes of it. And I'm never going to watch the other bits because I missed those first 6 weeks of it. So even if it turns into, right, this might be Citizen Kane match with Casablanca, and I'll never know.
I used to watch those WWF pay-per-views and wait for the David Sahadi recap videos because I didn't watch all those Raws and SmackDowns.
And you got the best version of that angle,
yeah,
right?
All at once.
You don't have to. Yeah, you don't have to watch 8 hours of Triple H interviews telling you about how he was the game. You got the 45 seconds of him doing it, and then of Batista going, "No, you're not the game. I'm the game. I'm going to beat you now." Right? You got the highlight. You got the trailer version of it. The trailer version's always better than the actual thing.
Always.
The actual thing has to have like the skeleton of the thing. Right? It has to have the moving pieces that get you from here to there. The trailer's just like, and he exploded, and then he was a vampire, and then the sun came up, and then everyone exploded, and oh, look, they're aliens. I gotta watch this movie. And then you watch the movie and go, none of this makes sense.
No, but I saw everything that happened already.
Yeah. Listen, I don't need to watch Nuns on the Run. I saw the trailer for Nuns on the Run. That had both jokes. I don't need to watch the other hour and 45 minutes.
Well, you talked about getting from here to there. We're going to talk about getting from here to there. The handler of Carlos Ruiz. It's Tone.com.
It's not Tone.com. You take that back.
Why is French silk pie your favorite?
Oh, well, French silk pie is fantastic. It's I'm a well-insulated individual. And French silk pie, used to, you'd go to, I think Baker Square's a national chain, or at least I think it used to be. And you go to Baker Square, you can get kind of like, here's a skillet, and here's some meat and potatoes and vegetables, and it's good. And then you stay for the pie. That's the whole thing. You go, you have some food, but also mostly have pie. And French, like banana, you get or like an apple pie. You could make an apple pie. That makes so much sense. Like, oh, you chop up some apples, you mix in some sugar, you put in a crust, you toss in the oven, you have an apple pie, right? French silk pie looks like magic. It's rich, it's chocolate, it's fun, it's just delicious. And this last year I decided I haven't been to Baker Square in like 10 years. They don't exist here anymore. I don't know if they exist anywhere anymore. Like, I'm just going to learn how to make a French silk pie. And then I learned how to make a French silk pie. I was like, oh man, this is really, really good. I'm going to keep making this. So you bring it to like family stuff. All right, here's a pie, but cut these small. Right? Like, this is butter and sugar and chocolate
to the max. Yes.
And it's nothing else. Right? Like, an apple pie has sugar in it, but also has apples in it.
Yes,
right?
which keep doctors away, apparently.
Right. But if you have, like, here's a brown sugar pie, like, that's a lot. Right? No, we just caramelized the sugar, and then we poured it into this pie crust. Now eat the sugar. And that's essentially what French silk pie is.
Yeah, it's chocolate and sugar.
Yeah, it's chocolate, sugar, and eggs. And what else do you want? I think maybe some heavy cream gets whipped into it. It's been a minute since I made it. Since the last pay-per-view. I haven't made it since then.
And that's why it's your favorite.
Yeah, and it's good. And you know what? If you ever bake something you brought to someone's house and they eat the whole thing, it makes you feel good.
Absolutely.
Look, I did a good thing. You like this. You didn't have to give me commentary. I came back with an empty pie pan. I know how this went.
You mentioned giving commentary. Well, Pete's up next.
Yay. I should buy his book.
You should buy his book over at Amazon.
I already have bought his book. It's right here.
I have too. One Chance, Legend of Valerian's Garden.
It's much better than any book I've ever written.
I would never ask you to choose your favorite, but what did you find different between Frenchie's tag team with Rick Kronos and his tag team with Keith Scott Zimmerman?
I think the biggest difference was that with Rick, it was more of a pair, right? They were both on the same level. They were both former world champions. They were both they saw each other as being on the same level. So they were two peers working together to accomplish something together. And that with KSC, it was more Frenchie was the mentor, and KSC, well, certainly on the rise, wasn't where he was yet.
Where Frenchie had been.
Yeah, where Frenchie had been. And KSC kind of looked up to him. And they were both portrayed as these are legitimate friendships. They really enjoy each other's company, and they love cheating together. But, Rick and Frenchie we are equals when we are a partnership of equals, and the international work rate connection was, hey, I'm the top dog here, but you're going to be, it's basically, hey, here's evolution, but with fewer douchebags. Where I'm where you're going to be 5 years from now. You are 100% going to be where I am right now, but you're not there yet. So that's the relationship. But they were both a lot of fun.
From Michael Unlikable. I've heard of that guy. What's the hardest part of taking a prolonged break from Efeding only to come back to dominate?
I mean, it seems so damned easy, Mikey. I don't know how to answer.
We had to give you a little stroke.
Well, I appreciate that. I mean, if the 60 pounds of gold wasn't enough, I mean, certainly that feels nice. But it's nice to know the muscle memory works, right? You're writing within the confines of, here's a pro wrestling show. Here are the things that happen. Here are, and I don't have to write the matches. That's the best part. But this guy's going to talk to an announcer. This guy's going to stand in front of a field. This guy's going to, right? You've seen all the moves. It's watching a magician do the trick.
Yes.
You know that
he's got
a secret pocket.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. You know it's a trick. But when they do it, and for that second, you're like, maybe that wasn't a trick. Maybe he did reach into an alternate dimension and came out with a rabbit. He probably didn't do that. It seems unlikely that he did it. But maybe. Right? And it's that second of maybe. It's nice to know that I can still do the sleight of hand.
There you go. Yeah, the old magician still got it.
Yeah. On the other hand, sometimes, like on the most recent show, I want to say that that's Joe's character and I both gave essentially the same promo.
Yes.
Like, it is both like, hey, you're talking to the announcer in front of the camera, and he's asking you, and even like the questions were in order, almost the exact same thing.
It's the prototypical, hey, I'm the new champion promo. One was just a baby face and one was just a heel.
Yeah, except one is like really the over-the-top, energetic, like high on cocaine, babyface promo, and the other one was kind of like the slow, low energy, maybe not malicious, but a hint of danger. Because Bruder's not right. Bruder isn't Lord Colossus.
He's not. He's not intimidating to look at, but he is like clever. He is undermining. Yeah. He is. Yeah, he's going to get you.
Yeah, and he's not intimidating in this context. If you saw him on the side of the road, you would cross the street. But when he's standing next to a 7-foot-tall guy in leather, you're like, we're grading on a curve here, man.
And I think the average height and weight in Classic is probably 6'8", 6'10", and 300 or 400 pounds.
Yeah. So, like, in the real world, like, if you saw him at a bar, you wouldn't start something with him, right?
Right.
But here, if your choice is, well, here's a hillbilly swinging a chain, and here's a bus, and here's a
7-foot voodoo doctor.
Yeah, here's a voodoo doctor. Here's a post-apocalyptic warrior. Here's a cowpuncher. Oh, look, there's a guy with a funny, with some funny facial hair.
He's all business. Yeah.
Yeah, he's all business. I'm not sure what.
I'll take that guy.
Yeah, listen, I take him too, right? If those are my choices, that's what I would pick.
And then he surprises you. I like it.
Yeah, and then he turns your lights off. He straps that camel clutch or the Cobra clutch on, and he turns your brain off for a little bit. And isn't that a little bit more terrifying than I just got power bombed?
Absolutely. And well, it depends on who you are.
I suppose there's that. And by the way, I love Lord Colossus. Hopefully he doesn't listen. It's like, my power bomb's awesome. It's like,
Volt thrower. Yeah.
The bolt thrower. The bolt thrower is
Volt
the best
thrower
blasted thing I've ever heard. Fantastic. But my character needs to have it. He needs to believe in himself, and this is how he believes in himself. I made your brain turn off. Top that.
Dude, there you go. Hard to beat. Speaking of hard to beat, Linz is up next, your favorite admin over on the Efed Podcast Discord. Who, handler and character, would you like to see come back from the old days, and who do you hope stays gone forever?
Let's see. I think Butch Rosser coming back with KSC or the Black Plague, but he was a great handler. He was funny. He was like, and for all I know, he's active still, and I just don't know that, right? But I'd love to see him come back. Again, there's a dozen guys, but I think Butch is probably the first one I think about. And Gone Forever, I didn't really have a whole lot of like dramatic Efed beef with anyone, right? There was one writer in Asylum who would come over to the Efed boards or to the FWO fan boards and just be a jackass. And I couldn't tell if he was doing a character or if he was just an unpleasant person. But I couldn't even tell you the guy's name. Like, I remember he made me angry. But I was also an admin on those boards, so he'd show up and I'd plonk him. I'm like, nope, you can't post here. And then he'd come up with a new screen name to, post more vitriol. It's like, well, you can't post here either. I'm just going to block your whole IP address. I don't care.
These days they can get around that too.
Oh, I'm sure. And they could have back then too, right? Because, again, if you were on AOL, you had whatever address AOL gave you right then. And when you disconnected, you lost it.
Yeah.
But it was still kind of nice to just go, listen, you're shouting into the void.
No one's listening, yes.
Yeah, but I couldn't even tell you that guy's name. He was a jerk, but, he wasn't meaningful, right? I did not have the emotional connection where you look back 18 years later and go, oh, Anti-Pete, he was the worst, and I hope he died in a fire. He's just gone to me, right? He's the positive side of we're all just names on the other end of an internet connection. Like,
he's just a guy in the past.
Yeah, but...
So, do Brock's dream of electric sheep?
I would say yes. Why wouldn't they? Also, of really good haircuts. Those are the two things they dream of.
And really good sandwiches.
Yeah, really good sandwiches. But, some people enjoy their haircuts. That's what I've heard. That is a rumor I've heard about some people.
I love haircuts.
Yeah, better than some things is what I've heard.
I'm not here to compare, but if we are comparing, I love haircuts.
Yeah.
Who are you most looking forward to working with in classic wrestling?
There's a couple people. Like, I hate most because I feel like I'm always going to cop out and go, oh, here are the 4 people I really want to do stuff with. I haven't done anything with Tone yet, and I think that those 2 characters would work really well together. He is it's a Carlos Ruiz. I think those would just be fun. He's also undefeated, so there's that. That's a nice little thing. On the other hand, it means I might lose, so that would be bad. But God, I would love to do anything with Double Decker, right? Just that one role play where he's like, all right, I'm going to cut off your air supply. All engines need it. I'm just, you don't have that snorkel that'll let you run underwater, and that's what it's going to feel like when I trap you in the Cobra Clutch. By the way, when 6 months from now, when you read that in a role play, you're like, that looks familiar. Yes, it does. Yes, it does.
6 months. I'm talking about booking this match next show now.
Okay.
First title match. I like Double Decker for the win.
Yeah, why not? I like him for the win too. I'm not going to throw it, but I could see how he'd win. I feel so awful when I get the names wrong. I think it's the cop puncher Gordy Lovett.
Gordy Lovett, yep.
We're both heel, so that's going to be harder to come across, right? The Amarettos, their tag team, again, it's harder to come across because they're a heel and they're a tag team and not a singles wrestler, but I just love their whole gimmick of evil magicians who are only a little good at magic.
I love writing their matches.
It's just so much. Like, basically, you toss me in there with anyone, I'm going to smile. Like, in the tournament, I ran up against JSN, Johnny St. Nelson, who's the minister character. I'm saying this for people who aren't and should read classicwrestling.com. And first off, I was terrified. I'm like, oh, well, this guy's going to beat me because he does such great stuff, right? Yeah. He's Brother Love for a serious character.
And menacing,
challenge, right? He's still not serious, but there's still a shine of comedy to him. But he's menacing, and there's just, again, in 750 words and I think 3 role plays at that point, you 100% got who he was.
Yep.
Right. I don't think I could write the role play for him, but I 100% got what he was doing.
You can picture with a character in your head immediately.
Yeah, and to do that with that word count and with how streamlined it is and the economy to it is just like, that is a hell of a trick. That is amazing, right? But you toss me in with any face character, and I think they'd be fun because just everyone is such fun and easygoing people. I think Wild Thing at some point. Again, right now we can't face.
Well, and you can't face later because I'm going to fire his ass. Sorry, Joe, you're fired.
Yeah. But when he goes to newgenerationwrestling.com, maybe I might have to follow in just
GoDaddy.com. Okay, sorry.
Right. I know that's a cop-out answer. Who are you looking forward to working with? I want to work with all of them, but I want to work with all of them. They're just
it's gimmicks, man. It's so much fun.
Yeah. And it's so easy to, it's nice to have I'm a real person with real problems and I'm a full developed character. That's nice. But it also gets a little harder to go, here's the thing I'm going to pick on because you're a neurotic basket case. Right? And I'm a neurotic basket case. And she's a neurotic basket case. And we're all Raven and suddenly none of us are Raven. Right?
We're all Raven. That is Efeding in a capsule right there. That is the quote of the year. We are all Raven.
Right? And one Raven stands out because he's doing something different. But when everyone's doing the same thing, it's like again, I keep going back to Double Decker. If we were all buses, the bloom's off the rose.
Yeah.
But only one of us is a bus.
Yes.
And it's the best of us. Like, I'm glad that he picked to be a bus and I picked to be Alex Bruder. Because I think he'd do a great Alex Bruder. And I think my role plays would just be me going,
yeah.
Hold on, I think I stalled out. Okay.
I missed the stop, yeah.
Yeah.
And finally from Linz, who is your favorite Surf Express bro?
That would be Linz's Surf Express bro.
Yes. Bowie Abrams.
Yes, Bowie Abrams is 100% what my answer is going to be. I wasn't trying to cheat the answer by just saying Linz. I definitely knew it was Bowie Abrams. Just like I 100% got the joke was that they're the Surf Express bro because they filled out their name wrong because they just say bro at the end of everything, and I thought they were just misspelling Surf Express brothers.
And then it stuck. Yeah.
Yeah, because I am very smart.
Yes. All bidneth, Alex Bruder.
All bidneth, baby.
Yeah, all bidneth.
Yeah.
All right. Well, you love to see it, Kev. That's what we got for you. Wrapped it up with the questions. We went a little long, but I think we're going to air it all. So you fans of the Efed podcast got a little extra bonus this week. I really enjoyed the interview, buddy. What'd you think?
I liked it a lot. I thought you do a great job with it.
Thank you, sir.
I was terrified because that is my personality. To the extent that I have a personality, it's mostly hungry and scared.
Okay.
But I thought it was really good. I was waiting for about 18 months after I got put on the wait list. I thought initially that was a joke. That was not a joke.
That was not a joke. No.
That was not a joke.
The problem with allowing anyone on a podcast is your wait list fills up so fast.
Yeah. But especially because I did what a lot of people do. I listened to the ones of the people I knew first. So
yes.
I know. God, let me listen. And I listened to Pete's, and it's, oh goodness, yeah, I got nothing. Like my interview is going to be. So I did e-wrestling because I didn't know how to talk to girls. All right, well that was a good conversation.
That's the Efed podcast in a nutshell, man. No, I appreciate your time, buddy, and I'm glad we got the chance to do this. I appreciate your patience on the wait list. And meanwhile, it gave us the opportunity to open Classic Wrestling, have you win the world title, and show the shit out of it on this episode. So that's a win for me.
Oh, yeah. If this is still on part of the podcast and you're listening to it and you're not reading classic-wrestling.com, you really should. You really, really ought to. And then when the next round of applications go out, you should join it.
That's right.
It's a lot of fun. And it's very low commitment. And you get to do the silliest things that just make you so, so happy.
Classic-wrestling.com. Is there anything else you want to plug, promote, or put over, Kev?
That's all I got. I'm the least interesting person you've ever met. I got nothing.
No, this was fun, man.
If anyone likes Parks and Recreation, 5th to 8th grade soccer, you can come watch my kid play. It's on a soccer field in the United States. You should probably know someone before you show up, though, because otherwise, like, hey, I just want to see these little kids run around the field. You're going to get some attention you didn't necessarily need.
To be fair, they can blame you.
I suppose that's true. Remember, it's me, someone else.
That's right.
Damn it, that didn't work.
It's you, Pete, the book writer.
Yes, it is I, Pete, the guy who wrote the book you should read. Buy my book, Pete.
All right, Kev, we're going to wrap it up. Thanks for joining us. Really appreciate it, bud. This has been a great time. And if you're not a part of classic-wrestling.com, check it out right now. One of the best websites on the internet, one of the best Efeds on the internet, and you're listening to the best podcast on the internet, the Efed Podcast. And that's a wrap for the Efed Podcast this week, episode 80. Guys, if you've joined us through 80 episodes, I applaud you. I appreciate you. Brian appreciates you. You've been great fans of the Efed Podcast. I'm so excited. 80 episodes in. We're excited to get to 100 and see what happens next. We're going to change things up, twist it, turn it upside down, and we're excited to bring to you what's next. In the meantime, we've got 20 more episodes over the next few months. Guys, our sponsors, check them out. Future Stars of Wrestling, FSWNetwork.com. Brian, that's your cue. Occupy Pro Wrestling, .com.
Keeping or putting the smart back in smart marks.
Keeping it too.
Since I forgot to say .com.
.com. And of course, EFEDtees, EWTees.com. And if you want to support the Efed Podcast, we appreciate you. We have patrons now. If you want to join the patronage, patreon.com/Efed Podcast. We'd appreciate each and every one of you considering. And the ones we have, we appreciate you guys so much. Thanks for your support each and every week. You make the show better, and we certainly don't. Brian?
100%. Every time I'm not really feeling like editing this shit, Mikey sends me some money, and I'm like, oh, I guess I have to now. It's obligation based, and I thank you guys for that obligation. Keeping it moving.
That's a terrible way to end the show. Okay.
I mean, hey, we gotta shoot it to him real, man. Shoot it to him real.
Guys, thank you very much for listening to the Efed Podcast through 80 episodes. Catch us in 2 weeks when we drop the next one with our boy Ed, that masked guy, on the Efed Podcast Discord. Kev, thanks so much for joining us this week. That was a blast. Fantastic. Guys, Efed Podcast Discord, where you catch your greatest Efed interviews in e-wrestling. That's what it is. Oh! Right here on the Atomic Dropcast Network. For Brian, I'm Mikey Unlikely, your host with the most. This is the Efed Podcast, where the wrestling is written, but the characters are real.
Been listening to the Efed Podcast, only on the Atomic Dropcast Network, presented commercial free on Patreon. Oh yeah!
Panera.
Hey Brian, if you're listening to this, you're the best. Yes, you are. No matter what Mikey says, you're the best. The whole show works because of you.